Oh my God. There's so much happening. Okay, I just want to show you, for those of you watching the show, and I'll describe for the listening audience, what my morning has looked like. We had the prosecution's closing argument in Diddy, which I followed. These are my notes. Word by word, I transcribed it as I listened to it twice. I'll explain how I did that in a minute because we're not in there. We don't have actual audio. Following, trying to figure out how to track with the evidence and so on. Then came his closing argument. He got up, not Diddy, but his lawyer, tracking that. Okay, trying to figure that one out. How did the arguments dovetail? Here we go. Boom, Supreme Court comes out, drops a massive opinion. Here it is. It's 119 pages. This is whether you can have a nationwide injunction issued by a district court judge to stop the Trump agenda, that will, like what's been happening. God bless America. The answer is no. Then comes this case, Mahmoud versus Taylor. This is the case, yay, authored by Alito. You know you're going to love it when it's an Alito-authored piece, saying, screw you, schools that want to say parents don't have a religious right to object to you shoving LGBTQ information down their throats in K through 5 education. Like in a case like that, when you see authored by Justice Alito, you just get down on your knees and you thank the Lord for this Supreme Court. I don't care. Sometimes we get annoyed. Coney, Barrett, Gorsuch, Roberts, they all did the right thing here. 6-3 in both of those opinions I just mentioned. Unbelievable. We're going to go through them all. This was on top of, just so you know, every day my team gives me these huge packets to get me ready for the show. Then they give me the AM update, which is where we got the name for our second, morning show. I've got my sound. Let's kind of look at all the sound that we have for you today. I can't even, there's a lot. Okay. So here's what we're going to do. It's going to be well organized and not as harried as I am. Trump is speaking, by the way, of course, he's speaking now, reacting because we don't have enough to cover for you. He's reacting to the Supreme Court, but if he says anything interesting, he's been on script in the beginning, which isn't as interesting. We'll bring it to you. We're going to start with two very smart lawyers on what happened at SCOTUS and put that in perspective for you. Then Maureen Callahan is going to come on. We may extend the show, almost certainly, to get into everything we have to do with her, including Diddy. So we're going to do that. All right, now let me tell you what happened at SCOTUS this morning, Supreme Court of the United States. In the first opinion that was released, this is the last day of the court's term, the Supreme Court severely limited, maybe entirely, the ability of district court judges to issue these universal injunctions. This has been resistance 2.0. This is what they've been using to stop the Trump agenda. And if you could have heard John Sauer, the Solicitor General, go in there to argue this case, he was saying all the things that you and I discuss all the time, like judges, they forum shop. They pick their favorite federal district court judge in the most liberal jurisdiction. And they go in and ask that guy, gee, hasn't Trump violated the law? And shouldn't we issue a nationwide injunction on that executive order and that executive order and that executive order? And therefore shut down his entire second term agenda. It's been working. You just find the most liberal judge, you make your case, you get your nationwide injunction, and yet another piece of Trump's agenda is done. And this court was listening. They said, you know what? You're right. And the answer to potential executive overreach is not judicial overreach, pretending we have more power than we do, to stop executive orders, to stop executive initiatives on a nationwide basis, as opposed to on a plaintiff by plaintiff basis, where we look at this plaintiff to see if he's adequately alleged harm and decide whether, for example, an executive order should be enjoined in this case. Okay, so as a result of today's ruling, these leftists likely will not be able to march into a far left judge in Boston or in San Francisco or in Washington, D.C. and get a Trump policy they don't like put on hold or ended while their case plays out in the merits, which could take years. This particular case stems from a very interesting issue, which, just FYI, has not yet been decided. It's Trump's executive order putting a stop to birthright citizenship, meaning if you're born here, you have citizenship, even if you're born to two illegals. Trump's trying to challenge that, saying, the Constitution is actually a little bit more ambiguous than it sounds. And there is some legal support for that. But that case is going to play out on the merits. And eventually there will be a ruling on whether he's right or wrong on that. The justices did not get to that and whether his executive order is constitutional. Instead, they got to whether these lower court judges who had stayed the effect of that order, who have said, you cannot look at babies being born right now to illegals and say that they're not citizens. Lower courts have said you cannot say that until we've got a final ruling in this case. And the Supreme Court said, okay, you can stay the effect of this executive order as to the named plaintiffs in this case, but we are not okay with the nationwide injunction thing. Not in this case necessarily, and not in all cases. We are convinced lower courts don't have that authority. Came down 6-3 along ideological lines. Justice Amy Coney Barrett writing the majority opinion. The dissents were blistering. They're so upset. So is David Hogg. So you know it's a good day. And we'll tell you all about the back and forth that went down between Justice Barrett and Ketanji Brown Jackson in particular. In another major win that I mentioned a minute ago, the justices letting Maryland parents opt their children out of classes with LGBTQ storybooks. And don't make any mistake, this ruling is going to be applied well beyond what was being shoved down the throats of these Maryland children. That case was also 6-3, with Justice Alito writing the opinion. Let me just start it here, okay? That one was for you, Scott Pelley. We've gone through this together. Moms of Liberty went on 60 Minutes with this guy trying to say at very young ages, schools are shoving leftist, woke ideology down the throats of young children, and it's inappropriate, in particular, sexual materials and LGBTQ materials. And Scott Pelley told America it wasn't happening. Watch.
There are rogue teachers in America's classrooms right now.
Rogue teachers.
Rogue teachers.
Parents send their children to school to be educated, not indoctrinated into ideology.
What ideology are they being indoctrinated into?
Let's just say children in America cannot read.
They often dodged questions with talking points.
You're being evasive.
21% of Hispanic students are reading on grade level.
You're being evasive. What ideology are the children being indoctrinated into? What is your fear?
I think parents' fears are realized. They're looking at these books where sexual discussions are happening with their children at younger and younger ages.
Tiffany Justice read from sexually explicit books written for older teens, but found in a few lower schools. Most people wouldn't want them in a lower school. But in a tactic of outrage politics, Moms for Liberty takes a kernel of truth and concludes these examples are not rare mistakes, but a plot to sexualize children.
You see, that was Moms for Liberty, just expounding just a kernel of truth in what they were saying. And then they bastardized this kernel to make a larger point. Screw you, Scott Pelley. In a 6-3 ruling, the U.S. Supreme Court just said it is happening. It's absolutely happening. And parents have a right to say no. Here's Justice Alito. The storybooks here unmistakably convey a particular viewpoint about same-sex marriage and gender. And the board has specifically encouraged teachers to reinforce this viewpoint and to reprimand any children who disagree. That goes beyond mere exposure. We reject this chilling vision of power of the state to strip away the critical right of parents to guide the religious development of their children. It is happening. It's happening in schools beyond Maryland. The U.S. Supreme Court has recognized it and has now just issued a powerful ruling arming parents state to state, coast to coast, with the tools they need to shut it down when it comes to their child. You're woke. You want to let your kid go in there and learn about chopping off his penis when he's 12. More power to you, sister. I think it's abuse. I think it's sad for your child. You want that. I think it's sick for a teacher or a school district to offer it at all. But there's zero chance I'm letting my child sit there. And as everybody listening to this show knows, I have not just talked that talk, I've walked that walk. It's why we left our schools in New York, as I documented at the time. We left schools we had previously loved because they tried to indoctrinate our children on the issue of gender and race. And we had it. And now we finally have a Supreme Court decision saying, we were right. Schools don't have the right to do this to our children. This ruling says religious grounds will give you the power you need to get your child out of it. That's not going to be a problem for most of our listeners. Most of us are religious people, not all of us, but most of us have a good faith religious belief that what is happening here is deeply wrong in the K through 5 school districts and can use this, but it'll be expanded beyond this because parental rights are not limited to those who are faithful. It's been a great day at the U.S. Supreme Court. Great. Here to break it all down for us, our friend Dave Aronberg. He is the author of the new book, Fighting the Florida Shuffle, the inside story of corruption in the drug treatment industry and how one community found the solution, along with Will Chamberlain, who is not Mike Davis. Mike couldn't be here today, but Will is senior counsel at Mike's Article 3 project, is, I mean, just as every bit as smart as Mike Davis. Will, don't tell him I said that, and has been on the program before. Don't miss a moment. Subscribe to this show on YouTube and follow me on Insta, Facebook, and X. Let's be honest. America can still be a dangerous place, and you cannot afford to wait when you need help. Sure, you could use a firearm, but in today's America, defending yourself with deadly force can potentially have legal consequences. According to FBI data, 99.9% of all altercations do not actually require lethal force. And that's exactly why so many are turning to Byrna. Byrna is proudly American, hand-assembled in Fort Wayne, Indiana. These less lethal self-defense launchers are trusted by hundreds of government agencies, law enforcement departments, and private security companies. Over 600,000 Byrna pistols have been sold, most to private citizens who refuse to be victims. Byrna launchers fire rock-hard kinetic rounds and powerful tear gas and pepper projectiles, capable of stopping a threat from up to 60 feet away. No background checks, no waiting periods, and Byrna can ship straight to your door. Take responsibility. Protect your future. Visit Byrna.com right now or your local Sportsman Warehouse. That's BYRNA.com or your local Sportsman Warehouse. Visit now and be prepared to defend. Great to see you guys.
Great to be back, Megyn.
Yeah, always good to be back. Thank you.
Let me start with you as the conservative, Will. What a day.
Yeah, I mean, on the nationwide injunction front, you're right. This basically ends the practice of nationwide injunctions in the absence of a class action lawsuit. And that's a really, really good thing because it's very hard to get a class action certified. And if you do, then if the government wins, there can't be any more suits on the topic. So it's a huge W in terms of stopping the lawfare against the administration. And on the case that you're talking about, Mahmoud v. Taylor, that's another huge win. I mean, and it's funny, I was just thinking to myself, listening to you, in a sensible society, we wouldn't be discussing whether or not parents had the right to opt out of this instruction. We would be discussing whether the people proffering this instruction should be criminally prosecuted.
Yes.
It's appalling that this is even happening. And so maybe we'll get there eventually. And an interesting Supreme Court case would whether those people might have a First Amendment defense to criminal prosecution as a result of trying to indoctrinate our children in this way.
Before I go to Dave, do you think this will be the first step in expanding the ruling eventually to just parents? Parents have a right to pull their child. You don't have to necessarily, what about free speech or ideological grounds? Does it always have to be based on religion? What do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, because in a sense, it's its own kind of religious doctrine, just not in the form of a religion, right? It's a kind of,
yes.
All these claims that they're making are these bizarre metaphysical claims about the nature of man and woman that have no scientific grounding. They're just as, essentially, they're bizarre metaphysical claims, honestly, that are religious in nature, except that there's no deity involved.
It's just so huge on a couple of fronts. I mean, what do you make of that claim, Dave, that back on the injunctions case, that this really has been resistance 2.0 and it was dealt a major blow today?
It's interesting, Megyn, and thanks for having me back. Good to be with Will. He's like the mild-mannered Mike Davis. And it really is, though.
Totally.
Yeah, I try to remind my Democratic friends on my side of the aisle that Democrats hated nationwide injunctions as well. Remember when mifepristone, the abortion drug, was banned nationwide because one conservative judge in Texas, who was picked for that reason, issued a nationwide injunction, and people on the left were outraged by it. So this cuts both ways. It's just that this is being done during the Trump presidency. And there is a way out. You can try to get a class action, or you can try to convince the judge that a nationwide injunction is still necessary to afford complete relief. So you can still make that argument. But this was a long time coming because there's been a lot of frustrations with these nationwide injunctions. It will make it tougher, though, to stop President Trump's actions. That's true. So it's still a big win for those who are supportive of MAGA and Donald Trump. If I can just say one other thing, Megyn, a little bit off topic. You mentioned my book. Do you know that the title of my book, Fighting the Florida Shuffle, comes from you? I don't know if you realize that.
No, I didn't know that.
Well, a few years ago, I was on your show, when you had the NBC show, and you did a whole segment on the Florida Shuffle. So this title, it all comes back to Megyn Kelly. Years later, the scams within the drug treatment industry, the fraud that exists, which is enabled, unfortunately, by well-intended laws like the Affordable Care Act, it continues. And that's why I wrote this book, and it showed how we fought it here in Palm Beach County. But this title comes from a segment you did years ago.
That's a great idea. You're turning into Alan Dershowitz, finding a way to get your book reference in to any hit about it. And it's smart marketing. And I support the book and you. So good on you. Can we talk, Will, about the fight between Amy Coney Barrett and Ketanji Brown Jackson who dissented, Ketanji Brown Jackson, in the nationwide injunctions case? I thought it was smart that they had Coney Barrett write the majority opinion. She hasn't written that many. She's becoming kind of loathed by many on the right for siding with the libs. And I think it was probably no accident that Roberts said, why don't you take this one and restore some of your good order, possibly with the right. And it wasn't just that she sided with the 6 conservatives to uphold Trump's right to do this, at least for now, to not be subjected to nationwide injunctions, but it's now pitted her against a very unpopular member of the Supreme Court with the right. And those two went at it. Amy Coney Barrett, in one instance, basically saying, your argument is too dumb for me to respond to. She says here, I'll read just part of it. We will not dwell on Justice Jackson's argument, which is at odds with more than 2 centuries worth of precedent, not to mention the Constitution itself. We observe only this. Justice Jackson decries an imperial executive while embracing an imperial judiciary. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think the thing to keep in mind here is that's not just a concurring opinion where one judge is expressing their anger. Six justices signed on to an opinion that treats Justice Jackson's dissent as silly and infantile. And that's not a good sign for Justice Jackson's influence on the court more broadly. You have to think that the 6 conservative justices found her arguments not just wrong, but kind of offensive and silly in order to put prose like that in a majority opinion of the court. So I think it's really reflective of how little respect the conservative justices have for her legal reasoning.
Yeah, there was another line where they say the principal dissent focuses on conventional legal terrain, like the Judiciary Act of 1789, in our cases on equity. Justice Jackson, however, chooses a startling line of attack that is tethered neither to those sources nor, frankly, to any doctrine whatsoever. And they go on. I mean, they just continue pummeling her in the majority opinion. Truly, if you read between the lines, it's, you're too dumb for us to argue with. These arguments are beneath contempt, and they're so unpersuasive and sophomoric, we're just not even going to devote the time. Your thoughts on it, Dave?
Well, I've known Justice Jackson since high school. She and I did high school debate. She was the best of the... Yeah.
Were you on her team or you were against her?
Well, we went to the same summer program together, but we were on from different schools. So I was never on her team, but she was always, I must say, the best in South Florida and Florida. Everyone knew her, and she really was outstanding. And then I knew her in college, and then I knew her in law school. And so I have a lot of respect for her. I must admit, I did not focus on her dissent. I focused on the main dissent, Justice Sotomayor's dissent. So I can't speak to the language, although it is unusual for a majority to be so dismissive of a dissent. So I'll give you that. I thought it was interesting in Justice Sotomayor's defense, in her dissent, that she focused not just on the history of nationwide injunctions, but also that this was a gimmick by the Trump administration. This was a way around the fact that they knew they were going to lose on the issue of birthright citizenship. So instead, they appealed the more popular issue of the nationwide injunctions, knowing they could win on that, but they're not going to win on birthright citizenship. So essentially, she's saying this is gamesmanship. Don't let them play this game, and the Supreme Court is allowing them to do so.
And she's saying that they fell for it, whether it's gamesmanship or not. Well, it worked. It worked like a charm because the Trump administration has gotten a nationwide injunction against virtually every executive order that he issued in that first week in office when we were celebrating like it was Christmas. Bit by bit, they've been shut down, and it's just gotten out of control. And the court acknowledges this. And Dave's right. Nationwide injunctions have upset the left and thrilled the right in the past. I was one of the thrilled people when we got a nationwide injunction against Biden's changes to Title IX. And I loved that. And it was shut down by one judge for everyone across the nation. So I'm not going to be able to have that moment anymore if we get another Democrat president in. But the Supreme Court was making a valid point from John Sauer, which was, yes, this has been happening for some time in more recent history, but it's gotten out of control.
Yeah, and I don't agree with Justice Sotomayor's position that this is gamesmanship, I think, for two reasons. One, I think the administration will expect that there's going to be an attempt at a class action filed in the birthright citizenship cases. And I would be surprised if a class action wasn't certified at some point, because you have, the injury is pretty common across everybody who might be injured. The idea that your children might not be citizens because you yourself were not born in the country, or you yourself are not either a permanent resident or a legal citizen. So I don't think there's gamesmanship in that regard. I think they're going to eventually confront, the administration knows it will eventually have to confront the constitutionality of birthright citizenship. So I don't think this is a game to get out of that. And then second, I think that it's not as simple as, oh, this is just obviously they're going to lose. There's a lot of precedent for the idea that birthright citizenship is just a misinterpretation of the 14th Amendment of the Constitution. I mean, the simplest empirical example of why that's probably true is that American Indians don't have birthright citizenship. They had to be granted citizenship by statute in 1924, 60 years after the passage of the 14th Amendment. And that's because everybody understood that, even though they're on American territory and subject to the sovereignty of the United States, they still had allegiance to their Indian tribes. And given that they actually, were born and reside on the territory of the United States, and so did all their parents, and yet they weren't granted birthright citizenship, the idea that it would obviously apply to the children of illegal aliens, I think, is certainly not guaranteed and certainly not obvious.
I think there's a real fight coming there, too. But it does raise an interesting issue, Dave, on what happens now, because now the plaintiffs involved in these particular cases who sued are not going to get bounced out because the babies are born to two illegals, right? The court says, in the named plaintiffs' cases, they can have the relief they're seeking. And the district court judge has to figure out exactly what that looks like. But since it doesn't apply beyond the named plaintiffs necessarily, we're not exactly sure, because the Supreme Court's kicking it back down to the district court to issue like an additional ruling. What's going to happen? Does let's say, it's got to be a situation where both parents are illegal, right? Or like the mother gives birth to the child and the mother is here illegally, because if the father were an American citizen, it would still have American citizenship. So anyway, my point is, does every illegal couple across America now need to go file a lawsuit to try to keep their kid in the United States, or able to get Social Security, papers and so on? We all get the kid's number when he's born. It's like unclear to me, based on what I read this morning, how that's all going to play out now.
Yeah, I think that this is ripe for a class action. I think that's the tack that the advocates will do. And I think that this will be tied up for the courts. So I don't think anyone's going to be deported who otherwise would be allowed to stay in the United States because of birthright citizenship. And I think the Trump administration acknowledged that it would be an uphill climb to get the Supreme Court to rule their way, because they could have sought a stay on the issue of birthright citizenship, but they didn't. They sought a stay based on the nationwide injunction issue, which tells you that I think they know themselves this is an uphill climb. So I think that where has an impact is on all the other issues out there where there are nationwide injunctions against Trump's other actions. That's going to be a problem for those who disagree with the president's decisions there, because I don't think that there will be anyone deported under this ruling, but I do think that there will be people who may be deported based on other decisions that the president has made.
This here, another one just crossed the transom. 6-3, the U.S. Supreme Court upholds a Texas law requiring users to verify their age to access porn sites. The first major test, quoting here from the Washington Post, the first major legal test of statutes in 24 states aimed at protecting young people from lewd content that has become ever easier to view. In a 6-3 ruling, the justices rejected arguments from the porn industry that the law violates the First Amendment rights of adults to access explicit content online because it required users to share identifying information that could be sold, misused, or hacked. The court's 3 liberals dissented. In dissent, Justice Elena Kagan, joined by Sotomayor and Brown Jackson, said, while it was a reasonable goal to try to protect minors from lewd material online, that should not come at the expense of the rights of adults. Will, I'm loving the Supreme Court, and these 3 libs are exposing themselves for who they are.
Yeah, it's another one of these cases where I have a hard time really understanding the dissent. I'll be honest, I'm not super familiar with this case and the legal arguments, like the First Amendment arguments at stake here. But you can't go to a store and purchase a pornographic magazine without showing ID to do so. The idea that that wouldn't translate to the online environment seems kind of obviously wrong, and would defeat much of the purpose of obscenity laws if it didn't hold, because most obscenity is accessed over the internet.
It's so crazy. It's great to see. Look, I'm happy for all these rulings, but the one that I'm happiest about is on the lewd material in classrooms. This was a sensible ruling. And, I've said before, if you're a conservative justice and you're on the wrong side of Justice Alito, you've done something wrong. You need to reevaluate. This was 6-3. So good for them. 6-3, 6-3, 6-3 on all the cases that matter today. Loving what I'm seeing. Thrilled. Dave, thank you. Will, you as well. What a day. I mean, I got to tell you guys, you can let these guys go. I know they don't need to stick around for my rants, but I covered the high court I was a lawyer, as you know, for about a decade. I covered the high court for Fox News and ABC News for years. And we've just never had a court like this. And I realize we love some of them a little bit more than we love some others of them. But when the chips are down and the law requires a win for the right, we do have 6 justices willing to do it. We do. When the law is just clear and the left has gone too far in their excess, we have 6. That's so much better than 5 justices willing to do it. So this bodes well on a number of issues that are likely to go up to the Supreme Court during the Trump presidency in particular. And I think we can be heartened to know that even the justices we may not love as much as we love Alito and Thomas, when the chips are down, tend to do the right thing. Okay, we hope. Let's see. Still not really over the Gorsuch thing on the trans ruling, but that's going to come back up too. Okay. Maureen Callahan is here. We have so much to do with her. We've got our Michelle Obama parody and its world premiere. And I am, I'm neck deep on the one side with the Supreme Court, and I'm neck deep on the other side with the Diddy closing arguments on both sides. Defense is going right now. I'll tell you everything they're both saying and what I think of how it's going. Spring is here and summer is around the corner. With sweatpants season finally over, it's time to swap those winter sweats for outfits that turn heads. When you are looking to refresh your wardrobe, Daily Look has you covered. A fantastic personal styling service for women. With Daily Look, you get your own dedicated stylist to curate a box of clothes based on your body shape, preferences, and lifestyle. These are real personal stylists, not an algorithm, and you get the same stylist every time. You start by filling out their style quiz and sharing your price range and lifestyle preferences. Then they send up to 12 handpicked items straight to your home. You try them on, keep what you love, and send back the rest. And the best part, Daily Look covers shipping both ways. Whether you need something chic for the office or you want to upgrade from last year's sundress, Daily Look has you covered. Head on over to dailylook.com to take your style quiz and use code Megyn for 50% off your first order. That's dailylook.com for 50% off. And make sure you use my promo code Megyn so they know I sent you. Dailylook.com, promo code MEGYN. Joining me now, the host of one of the hottest news shows on the internet. Thrilled it's part of our MK Media podcast network. It's called The Nerve with Maureen Callahan. Maureen, welcome back. Great to see you.
It's great to see you, Megyn. Oh my God, I've missed you.
I know, same. I'm listening to you all the time. You're crushing it. I find you so entertaining and so fun. The troublemakers in you have become a must listen for me, and who would be surprised? All right, there's so much to get to.
That is high praise.
I'm like overwhelmed by the amount of news that we're looking at here. So we got to do the Diddy trial. I'm going to play some sound bites from the prosecution's closing. The way I'm able to do that is one of my favorite Twitter accounts for staying up on Diddy trial news is at Diddy Trial Daily. I don't know who's behind it, but he's doing a great job. And so at Diddy Trial Daily voiced 22 minutes of the prosecution's 5-hour closing argument and kind of brought us in. Now we can see the transcripts ourselves, but it's always nice to have somebody reading it and kind of bring it to life. So when we play sound bites from the prosecution's closing argument, which was done by a woman, not by this guy who's a man, but in any event, you'll hear these excerpts. It's just from this guy on the internet who I follow, who's been following the case very closely. Okay, here are, I'm just going to go through it, Maureen, some of these. Here's what the prosecution said. I got to put on my little reading glasses, my writing. Would you look at my writing? It's really terrible. I don't know if you can see this, but it's terrible.
Mine is way worse. I've seen it. Mine's way worse.
It looks like a stenographer, only without the clever, clues for shortening words. Okay. The prosecutor says, first of all, this guy led a criminal organization and said, look at 2 incidents, just to keep this in your head. March 2016, the Intercontinental, when he beat her, and we all saw the tape. 2024, when he choked and hit Jane, the next girlfriend, the most recent girlfriend, as she tried to escape. He beat the hell out of her and then made her do a hotel night, a night of debauchery or a freak-off night, whatever. Time and time again, they talked about how with Jane in particular, she would beg him to just have a normal relationship, to show her any sort of normal affection, saying, I'm not an animal. I'm not a porn star. I just want to have a normal relationship with you. And he'd say, okay. And he'd say, we're going to go out to dinner. And they'd show that he had ordered the sex worker as soon as he hung up with her. And after he beat her, he called a sex worker. After she was crying, after 2 sex partners at one of these freak-offs or hotel nights, she threw up, said, I can't do this. And he said, you get back out there. You got to do number 3. And she, that's what the prosecution's starting with. You remember, just to kick it off, 2016 Hotel Intercontinental in LA, what happened to Cassie when she tried to leave a freak off and he got beaten up in front of our very eyes on that tape. 2024, he choked and hit Jane as she tried to escape because he was determined to watch her do what he wanted to watch her do. They talked about how this is, hold on, I gotta put my glasses back on. They said he relied on his wealth and his power to place himself above the law, and his staff helped him. It was a Combs enterprise, and it existed to serve him. He named the names within the enterprise, KK, his sort of chief of staff, and others who helped trap the women, supplied cash and drugs across state lines. That alone is sufficient, they said, to get him on racketeering. And they said he himself engaged in, purchased, funneled drugs. He's guilty of kidnapping, of arson, of bribery, of sex trafficking of both Cassandra and Jane. He forced them into labor, those women, into doing this, and also one of his other staffers who he kidnapped and brought over to Kid Cudi's. He said he engaged in travel for commercial sex, meaning he hired sex workers. The drug distribution was critical to the freak-offs, and many helped. get the drugs to Cassie Ventura and to Jane at every freak off. Capricorn Clark is the woman who he kidnapped and brought with him to Kid Cudi's. And also she testified that, we talked about this last time you were on, Maureen. She's the one who says she was kidnapped by so-called Uncle Paulie, who worked for Diddy, dragged to some building in Manhattan. And maybe we didn't talk about this. Maybe I'm just thinking about you talking about it on The Nerve and me talking about here. Anyway, dragged there and given a lie detector test for 5 days to see if she stole some jewels from Sean Combs. And they're saying, look, this is not legal. You can't do this. They talked about the kidnapping and they talked about Kid Cudi in a part that was very interesting. Here's, again, our friend at Diddy Daily reading the part about Kid Cudi.
In January of 2012, Combs orchestrated this whole arson on Kid Cudi's car. A hole was cut in the roof and a Molotov cocktail was dropped in. And we know it was Mr. Combs because voice notes captured Combs' threats to blow up the car. And Cudi had no other conflicts except for with Combs. And then D-Rock later brought Cudi to Combs, where Combs apologized, so we know that was him.
Okay, so that was the Kid Cudi thing. Then I'm just going to play one other soundbite and I'll bring you in, Maureen, on it. They talked about Jane, the other key witness, and how she wrote to him saying, I don't want to do this. Like I said, I'm not an animal and I'm not into this at all. Like, I want a real relationship. I don't want to just be used as your circus animal. And how he responded to her, I'm about to disappear on you. You get on your job. Here's that. It's again, read by Diddy Daily.
Jane's case began with love bombing. She was smitten. There were trips to the Caribbean. Dr. Hughes calls this love bombing stage a grooming tactic. Combs gave Jane ecstasy. It caused her convulsions. He made her put baby oil all over herself. He made her wear lingerie. He loved red lights. In May of 2021, high and eager to please, Jane joined a freak-off with an escort. Initially, she was excited, but she didn't see it dominating her life and the relationship. She texted Sean her desire to stop, wanting non-activity hotels, but Combs ignored her. He was serving his desires. He would dictate how long they would last. He would make her request nude photos from male escorts for his benefit. When she would ask to use a condom, he would be condescending. When she would try to speed up, he would make her slow down. He dangled gifts and money and unfulfilled promises in front of her. You saw texts where Jane wrote, I don't want you to use me to fulfill your freaky, wild desires in hotel rooms. He'd write back saying, look at the roof over your head and your pretty mouth and teeth, leveraging the rent that he had paid and the veneers that he had paid for. For an all-star party, he demanded she had sex with 3 men. She sent pictures of period blood to resist. In a voice note, you heard him say, I'm about to really disappear on you. I don't have time for this. You got me on my job, now you get on your job.
Maureen, devastating.
That is so brutal. That note about the period as just trying any means necessary to get this guy off of her metaphorical neck for a minute. You know, I'm so grateful that the Cassie video is out there in the world.
Yeah.
I think without that video, the defense would have had a much easier time convincing, again, a very sophisticated, hardened jury that this is nothing more than lovers' spats over one partner's sexual preferences. And, you know, a fetishization of baby oil that frankly is Warholian. But I think I'll be shocked if he's not found guilty. I'll be shocked. You know, I remember talking to you about this last time I was with you, and I asked you as a lawyer, when he went after Cassie, when she was trying to run out of that hotel room at that elevator bank, and he grabbed her and threw her to the floor and dragged her back to that room, does that legally constitute kidnapping? And you said yes, without hesitation. How can they not find him guilty of at least that count?
And they're arguing. See, I think part of the problem people have in understanding this case is the misunderstanding of what sex trafficking is. Racketeering, that's a whole other thing, but they're trying to show he's like a crime boss with all these people who work for him who are enforcing his orders to commit crimes. And it's like, I guess we just sort of roll our eyes and say like, oh, he's a rocker, like he's a music mogul. They all do drugs. Well, you know what? It's still illegal. They all use prostitutes. Okay, it's still illegal. They all have guns. Well, it may or may not be illegal, depending on the nature of the gun and its use. They don't all commit arson or kidnap or brutally batter repeated women. They don't bribe hotel security guards to hide tapes of their beatings. They don't allegedly go to nightclubs and shoot somebody in the face. He denies that. Somebody else was found guilty for it, but that man claims that Diddy actually did it. Okay, in any event, what the prosecution is showing is this has gone so far beyond like mild law breaking, for lack of a better term, that you might even assume your average rap mogul has engaged in. It's just so far beyond. And on the sex trafficking, they have to show that these women were sort of forced, that they were forced to perform sex at these hotel nights or debauchery nights or freak-offs without their consent. And the prosecution pointed out, it's not a problem for us if they consented to some. We only have to show that there was one that they didn't consent to. And by the way, mid freak-off, you can withdraw your consent. And if he continues to force you from that point forward, he's guilty. And the sex trafficking, yes, it can happen where like there's an international ring and they kidnap young girls and they force them to perform sexual, behavior for creepy old men. That's a form of it. But I learned this when I went over to NBC and did, a lot different kind of segments, softer segments, the only upside of NBC. Sex trafficking in America looks very different. And what happens in a lot of cases is you'll have online dating where the girl shows up ready to date somebody she met online, and she finds out while she's in his car driving to their dinner, he knows about her 3-year-old son because he did his homework on her. And he brings her to a hotel and says, you're going to go in there and you're going to screw these next 3 guys or your son gets it. That is absolutely sex trafficking, forcing someone to perform a sexual act by force or threat. And so that's how you have to understand the Diddy case. They're saying these women were threatened with their livelihoods, which he controlled, with embarrassment because he'd already gotten them on camera performing these things when they still thought they loved him and he loved them, with professional embarrassment, with a beatdown, another physical beatdown, which both of them had testified he served them multiple times, and so on. And so like that they were no more free to say no to those freak-offs than this woman who was, by the way, it's a real case that I just outlined, whose son was under threat if she didn't go through with suddenly becoming a forced prostitute.
I mean, I think the evidence is overwhelming. I would like to think, again, post-Harvey, that there's been a much more nuanced understanding of what constitutes a victim of rape, sexual abuse, and or sex trafficking, to your point. It's the same with rape, right? Your husband can rape you. Yep. That marital rape, I think, is a relatively new statute on the books. Am I correct?
It's been around for decades, but there was a time in this country, like around the 1950s, where you could not rape your wife legally.
Yeah, that to me feels like the blink of an eye, The Diddy thing, what I wonder, how much do you think, because human beings are human beings, that emotionality is going to play into this verdict? Because there were multiple reports that the times that the jury was forced to watch those videos of the freak-offs, that at least half of them looked visibly ill.
I think the jury's going to do the right thing, and that's a conviction. I actually think he's going to be convicted on all 3 counts: racketeering, forced sex trafficking, and obviously the the transport of sex workers across state lines. That one they just should have pleaded guilty to, because it's just, they have him dead to rights. The only defense to that, it was offered in the defense's opening, where they suggested they weren't coming for sex. He wanted to talk about like their feelings. He wanted them to come for like emotional support. Like I was like, would you just admit that one, okay? In any event, he's definitely going down. If he doesn't go down on that, it's total jury nullification. That's kind of the one that will show us whether this jury was just enamored with his fame and fortune and power. if he's found not guilty on the traveling people for sex trafficking or for prostitution, because he very clearly did that. There's really no defense. But I think he's going to be found guilty on all three of the charges. And what's happening now is kind of interesting because you've got Agnifilo. He's the lead defense counsel up there doing his closing. And Agnifilo, again, just as a reminder for the audience, represented the NXIVM cult founder, Keith Raniere, from my hometown. We're known for more than this, Albany, New York.
Well, 2 stars out of there.
Yeah, right, 2 stars. It failed. He did this same thing that he's doing now with this jury, which is like, oh, this is utter nonsense. I'm looking for my papers on him. Oh, this is utter nonsense. Oh, this is bullshit. Here it is. You're smarter than that. And the jury was like, we are smart and we see right through you. But here's some highlights of his defense. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, let's talk about who Sean Combs really is. He's a self-made Black entrepreneur. Had to get that in there, Maureen. A visionary. A man who built real businesses so successful and groundbreaking that major players chose to partner with him. Don't take my word for it. Derek Ferguson told you that himself. He was a witness. You think it's easy to be Sean Combs? It's not. How many witnesses sat in that chair and admitted they were pushed, challenged, even changed by him? Those assistants, they said it felt like Harvard Business School. They were pushed so hard. Did they like it? No. But did they grow from it? Absolutely. They didn't always like him, but let's be honest, they loved him, even the ones suing him today. Now, by the way, all of that, I could actually say that about my team. I think I push my staff to the point where it's like a Harvard Business School education, and that maybe they don't always like it, but they grow from it. But I didn't actually ask them to like give me drugs or clean up after my sex romps, or I didn't kidnap them and subject them to lie detector tests. I didn't bring them with me for a kidnapping or an arson against somebody else. I don't force them to get my drugs. It's a long list. I mean, our summer intern's right outside my office door here. I'm sure she can attest. Really, what she's been doing mostly is bringing me paper. So in any event, it's like this generic defense, Maureen, for like horrific things. And then one other thing, he goes back to the race. Okay, so this guy took the stand, this Derek Ferguson. He's from the Bronx. He told you there weren't many hiring people like me, but Sean Combs did. Why? Because he saw talent. He built something bigger than himself. Because real diversity, not just performative DEI, was something he lived. And he was doing it at 24 years old, long before it was trendy, long before it was corporate policy. And what do prosecutors call it? Racketeering. That's the story they're trying to sell you. What? He's not on trial for being a racist. This is such a non sequitur.
He's just a Black businessman trying to make his bones in America, Megyn. He should have had Sonny Hostin on his defense team. By the way, I think the one thing you missed in sort of the like school of, I'm bringing you up through the school of hard knocks. I'm going to teach you how it's done. Dangling people off of balconies. One of Sean Combs's alleged go-to moves, which is just, I mean, this guy is so dangerous, lest we forget. He attempted to get bail 3 times and he was smacked down every single time. And the main reason was the threat that the government believed he posed to potential or existing witnesses against him in this case. I mean, he is a dangerous, dangerous guy. I agree with you. I think he will be found guilty. I think he will be living out his days at MDC, fighting it out with the likes of Luigi Mangione for popularity, clicks, and likes. Mm-hmm. And also, I'm very curious, what did you make of, because originally we had been told that the defense had 3 witnesses they were going to put on, 2 of whom had been ex-Bad Boy employees of Sean Combs. And then a few days ago, they announced, no, nobody, we're going to put nobody up. We're just going to go straight to closing arguments. What do you make of that strategy?
They're relying on their cross-examinations of the prosecution's witnesses, some of which were very effective. The dangling over the balcony lady kind of fell apart on cross. I don't believe that it was a lie, but they had reason to believe that it was a lie because she said she was injured and she showed pictures, and the injuries that she showed were from a date when Sean Diddy was out of the country. So they did a good job on the defense in crossing some of these witnesses with what they had. You know, their whole thing is, I'll give you the line. Okay, back to Agnifilo. Poor Sean Combs, that's my word. They didn't say poor Sean Combs, but that's what they're trying to say. He gets arrested. His home is raided, property destroyed. A special response team, like we're dealing with a terrorist, not a businessman, bursts in. No cameras allowed, no accountability, just chaos. His children were there. 6 of them sitting in this courtroom, second row. The 7th, still a baby. This is the man they want to reduce to headlines and sound bites, a man who takes care of people, pays for them. So what do? They wrap metaphorical yellow crime scene tape, not around a murder scene, but around Sean Combs's bedroom, his hotel rooms, his personal relationships. They're not investigating crimes. They're criminalizing private choices. This, I have to say, I like. I don't buy, but I like it as a clever legal way around the facts for this defense team.
You know, it just broke today, by the way, that Sean Combs and one of his sons, I wonder if it's one of them who is in the courtroom right now, are being sued for, I believe, $30 million for rape. And I remember reading about this accusation. I think it happened on a boat. I'm not sure. But I can't imagine the jurors haven't seen that. And that I know they're supposed to only deal with the facts in front of them submitted as evidence, and whatever the defense puts on as their cross and their defense. But I just think a New York jury knows exactly who this guy is. We've been living with Sean Combs in New York since the early 90s, at least. You know, I remember that event he put on. He escaped criminal prosecution, but it was an overcrowded venue that he promoted, and people died in a stampede.
He's had an above the law attitude and existence for 30 some years now, and it finally caught up with him. There's more to discuss. We have to take a break. He denies all of these charges, says he's a good Bible thumping man. We'll see if the jury agrees, but there's more to discuss. And Maureen stays with us for the rest of the show. Bezos, Wintour, and Megyn O. Stand by. It was not supposed to get this bad. Maybe you were on top of your bills, and then inflation hit. Groceries, gas, everything shot up. Prices up 26% from what they were just a few years earlier. 26. It is not necessarily your fault if you've fallen into debt. Let me share a smarter, faster, far easier way out of debt, though, for you. It's called Done with Debt, and they are not like other debt relief companies. They don't push loans or bankruptcy on you. Done with Debt has legendary negotiators who go head-to-head with your credit card and loan companies. They have one goal: to drastically reduce or eliminate your debt altogether. They move lightning fast. Most clients see more money in their pocket month 1. But a word to the wise, hurry, because some of their debt erasing strategies are time sensitive. Consider talking to a Done with Debt strategist before you make another bill payment. It's free. Visit donewithdebt.com. That's donewithdebt.com, donewithdebt.com. Maureen Callahan, host of The Nerve with Maureen Callahan, is back with me now. You can go and subscribe to her show. Highly recommend you do so. It's called thenerveshow.com. That's the website you can go to make sure that you are subscribed. Never miss an episode. YouTube, it's also available, and wherever you get your podcasts for free. Again, The Nerve with Maureen Callahan. All right, there's more to talk about on Diddy, but I want to pause it because it's important that we bring the audience our world premiere before it's too late. Maureen and I have become, in addition to astronauts, professional actresses, and we've been booked on many high-profile gigs. We've got definitely more audience watching our acting gigs than watch many of the things that have made others stars in Hollywood. So yeah, we're legit. That's what you need to know. And we got the gang back together because there was somebody we found so annoying, so constantly complaining, so cringy that we felt the need to mercilessly mock her. Those are really the ingredients that will bring us out of our day jobs and have us put our acting caps back on. And really, we could think of no more worthy candidate than Michelle Obama, who, as you know, has launched a podcast along with her brother Craig, who sits there as her supplicant episode after episode. It's not doing well. She's going on other people's podcasts to try to sell it. It's not working. And we have figured out why it is not working and she is not selling. And I believe it will become apparent to all of you in the following world premiere of Megyn O.
Megyn O is one of America's most admired former first ladies.
Seriously, is there anyone more inspiring?
I mean, who doesn't love Megyn O?
Choice for president. There's really no one else who is more popular than her.
Megyn O is on the cover of Vogue for the 12th time.
I think she's living her best life. I think she's doing whatever the hell she wants, wearing whatever the hell she wants, putting her hair in whatever shape she wants it.
Megyn O didn't just, fill the first lady role. She actually reshaped it.
I got an advance copy of what everybody's calling the book of the season, and I loved it so much. I've already read it twice.
Former First Lady Megyn O is launching a new podcast today.
And not just solo, she's doing it with her sister, Maureen.
Now, prepare to be inspired and uplifted like never before. Here is former First Lady, Megyn O.
I've been doing the work and going to therapy and just figuring out, what happened those 8 years we were in the White House?
What happened that 8 years?
What did that do to me internally, my soul?
No one talks about this.
No, they don't.
We made it through.
We got out alive.
I hope we made the country proud.
My girls are whole.
But what happened to me?
What happened to me?
This is so brave.
She'll share many cherished memories from 8 years as First Lady.
Many people don't understand. Not much is covered in the White House.
It's expensive to live in the White House.
I had to buy the groceries. I had to pay for everything. I mean, my house was paid for, and my 19 acres were paid for, and my staff was paid for. My husband had a plane, and I had a plane. But we had to pay for my daughter's plane tickets. Yeah.
Oh, my God.
We had to buy our food.
Stop.
Who else has to buy their own food?
How would we manage this?
Tune in every week for Megyn O's insightful relationship advice.
Picking your mate is like picking a basketball team. You can't just have somebody who's a shooter or plays defense. He's got to do it all.
You don't want to marry a man who's like, well, I don't cook.
You got to make sure that he can cook, he can do the laundry, he can be your emotional support partner, he could be president, and he better do at least 50% of all household chores, or you've married a sexist.
I know you don't cook.
I do not.
And now, are you cooking now?
No. No, it's not on my agenda.
Hear Megyn O share the many joys of parenthood.
I don't understand these women who have these kids. It's like, I'm going to have these kids. They're going to be so great. Do you know what having children does to your life? It ruins it.
They mess you up.
Your life is ruined. Say goodbye to your happiness, whatever may have existed.
They're a hassle.
They're exhausting.
And they're demanding.
Finally, they're launched. So now mine are somebody else's problem. But my God, the sacrifice. I could have been happy.
She'll offer uplifting advice to help anyone facing obstacles or adversity.
If I've learned nothing else, I have learned it's not my fault. And I've learned that this is a racist, disgusting country. Those two things I know. People ask me all the time, they want my advice. And so they ask me, what is marriage? What does it mean? And I tell them, it's about misery.
I tell people, and folks think that this is harsh, it's like you're going to have a bad decade.
And when you have a bad decade or two, what you need to remember is it's not you. It's your husband or your children. That's who's to blame.
If you choose to have a traditional marriage and you have kids, let me tell you, the years of 1 to 13 will be bad.
And don't be surprised. People say, it's a bad week, it's a bad day. No, we're talking decades now of bad marriage that you definitely need to blame on someone else. I'm Megyn O. People need to hear from me.
I'm Michelle Obama. People,
That's right.
People line up for my advice.
We don't articulate our pain.
Yes.
We keep it all bottled up inside, and then nobody ever asks us about ourselves.
We all want to know, what can we do?
How can we help you all?
Do something. Why do I always have to be the one to explain how angry I am? Figure it out.
Don't make us feel like we're crazy.
That's it. I think we nailed it.
Inspirational yet again. Megyn, oh my God. This one was, they kind of get easier and easier, first of all, again, neither one of us, to my knowledge, I'm open about having no formal acting training.
Nope, no training.
and these gifts just keep landing on the proverbial doorstep, I mean, the dialogue, if we had credits rolling after that spoof, the script would have been written by one Michelle Obama.
Yes, that's exactly right. No, we have Jake Whitman, who produced it for us. Again, he came, and it was just the three of us, and he gave us like a couple of lines. In particular, he was giving me things that Michelle Obama has actually said, because I think he had the vision of splicing her in. And you almost couldn't believe them. It was like, I think you might need to go back and check that. There's no way that must have come from some other parody. But no, time and time again, it was her exact words. She's even more miserable than we portrayed her.
Even more. And since then, I can't wait to see how this is received, because I think it's another banger. But she did that podcast recently where she said, I think you talked about it on your show. We definitely did on The Nerve. Like, oh, she's so glad she and Barack never had a son.
Yeah.
Because God forbid Barack had a Barack Jr. And she would have felt so bad for this child, this boy, who probably would have inherited Barack Obama's looks, talents, charm, charisma, intellect. Oh God, no, the earth was spared another version of Barack 2.0.
It's unbelievable. Like, even if you're going to spin that as charitably as possible, like, oh, he would have had to live up to Barack Obama. She didn't say that. She didn't then clarify the point to make sure that that's what she meant. And so I genuinely think she meant what she said. Oh God, I'd have another Barack Obama on my hands. And who the hell wants that? I mean, we kind of can relate, but whatever, it's fine. It's different. We're the general public. But it was so funny. Like, I'll show the audience one other thing. Yesterday we had on Ruthless, and Josh Holmes was saying you should show some outtakes, because we showed a tease. I'm like, we should show some outtakes. So they cut a couple of you and me when we were sitting there, and just how funny it was, because she's so absurd. We had no idea she was this negative a person when she was first lady, and still behind the marketing PR wall that had been placed in front of her. It's been such a gift to see her out there, just genuinely her, so we can see she is truly somebody with the darkest vision of life, especially marriage and children, I've ever seen in a public role. Here's a little bit of you and me trying to get through this thing without losing it. All right, let me think of her other lines. We don't articulate our pain.
Yes.
Nobody ever asks us about ourselves.
We have to ask ourselves, the men in our lives, is why wait to be asked?
That's amazing. Why do I always have to be the one to explain how angry I am? People ask me all the time, do you miss the White House? No.
Do you ever have dreams that you still live there?
Oh, no.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let's see, what else? What other favorites do we have?
In long-term relationships, you're gonna have deep, deep dips.
We're talking decades now of bad marriage.
You're gonna have a bad decade.
My life became about someone else.
I mean, I've been married to my husband for 30 plus years.
What is marriage? What does it mean? It's about misery.
People don't think about that as they date, because they're trying to find the match that where all those 30 years are gonna be blissful.
Yeah, well, that's crazy.
And it's like, that's just not gonna happen.
All you get is nothing. Emptiness.
We all want to know, what can we do to help you?
How can we help you all?
Do something. This ridiculous person.
Maureen, for the listening audience, Maureen is wearing a pink Obama hat and a pink t-shirt that reads hope in a skit.
I think the hat read Obama 2028. Yeah. Like Jake was the one who sourced that stuff. Yeah. The other thing that I don't think made final cut, but Brother Craig getting yelled at for daring to ask how he could help, right? Because he should know already.
That's right.
So Brother Craig can't win. And by the way, Brother Craig does all the ad reads. It's like Meghan Markle's podcast, Megyn, where like Megyn, you can tell on her second now failed podcast, which allegedly has not been renewed. She says she's stepping away, but you could tell some of these ad reads were written for her. They have the pronoun I in them, and they go towards her interest. And she clearly demanded that a voice actress be hired to do those ad reads, because Meghan Markle will not. She will sell jam, she will sell edible flower arrangements, whatever, but she will not read an ad on her own podcast, nor will Michelle Obama, because it looks like Brother Craig is doing the heavy emotional lift, which I suspect has been his defensive crouch his entire life.
A lot. Has been a lot. She's still at it. Just this week, she's on her podcast offering, well, here's this Diddy in SOT 14.
There will be parental pain. We have to become tougher for the sake of our kids. And I just don't think that there's any way around making this easy for parents. I think that's what we...
Parenting is never easy.
It's not supposed to be. And it's not fun. Life isn't fair. And that's another lesson for kids to learn.
That's right.
It's not fun. It's painful having children. It's not fun.
And she wonders why, as she told Amy Poehler, her daughters run the other way when she opens her mouth to offer what is surely unsolicited advice. And she's sitting there going, I'm Michelle Obama. People pay for my advice. I mean, you can see she's rarely photographed with those girls. Like, imagine your mother going on any podcast that will have her to say what a chore and a burden it was to bring you into the world and raise you.
Like, in all seriousness too. Like, she actually wants us to know that she's serious. They're a hassle, she says. The years of 1 through 13 will be bad. That's just not true. It's so funny. Like, I look back on my own experience with my kids. Yeah, it's hard when they're very little. It's a lot more hard work than, now my kids are 15, 14, and almost 12. But it's still fun. They're so cute. I don't know a mother who would look back at years 1 through 13 and say, it's going to be bad. Those 13 years, they're bad. The kids are a hassle. And then doubles down here saying parenting is not fun. It's painful. What the fuck, Maureen?
This is amazing, because I've been plotting for a long time now, and I think it's going to be a recurring segment. Pieces on difficult mothers, and I think Michelle Obama is her own form of difficult mother. Imagine she was in the White House with her own mother there to help with raising the girls. Now, when she was there, the line out of the White House was, Michelle's only focus is the girls and making sure the girls get through it with as normal a childhood as possible. And you can only imagine the level of help and staff she had, not to mention the Secret Service. Like, there was no school run Michelle Obama had to do. There were no after school activities she had to be present for. I'm sure
meals
any parent
to prepare.
Conversation. What did this woman have to do vis-a-vis the actual care and feeding of her children in the White House? Nothing. She had Jenna Lyons on speed dial making bespoke J. Crew outfits for every like, what is she talking about?
Right. Well, how is it so hard? She's like, honestly, it's like, plus, it's so clueless, right? It's like there are women out there right now who are working 2 jobs, who are single moms, trying to keep their kids in school, trying to deal with the disastrous consequences of policies that her husband helped push and enact. And they don't complain. Not 1/8 as much as Michelle Obama, with her hundreds of millions, multiple estates, beloved status, becoming status as former first lady, on the cover of Vogue 3 times. Like, she has no idea how she sounds to regular people. Here's another one here. Poor Michelle. Her life has been all about other people, Maureen. See, she could have been the star, and because of that effort, she wasn't. Here's SOT 17.
I don't know if my ambition has ever fully been able to actualize itself because of the nature of what me and my husband have done. I mean, I guess you could argue as a team,
right?
It
wasn't about your individual ambition.
Was it right? It was the team ambition, and I went along arguably kicking and screaming, right? And I think I'm now at a stage in my life where all my choices are mine. All my now I can say that whatever I'm doing from this point on is about my ambition.
Oh my God. Tiniest violin, Maureen.
I have so many thoughts about this. First of all,
Let's hear them all.
The level, you know how they say rage and depression, they're two sides of the same coin. Depression and anger. Like depression is suppressed anger, you know?
Yeah.
I think the level of rage that she has suppressed throughout that tenure in the White House and the time thereafter is like, it's a Vesuvian level of eruption we're looking at. It's a Mount Vesuvius of rage that is coming out of Michelle Obama. She says, first of all, can I also just say, my favorite first lady, Jackie Kennedy, saw her husband's brains get blown out next to her. If anybody had rage that was understandable to be expressed in the public square, it would have been Jackie Kennedy, who went about the rest of her life minding her own business, okay?
Yes.
Secondly, you know, so she says, I'm dragged kicking and screaming to the White House. As said, we've discussed this before. If this woman, when she met Barack Obama, didn't see his ambition coming at her like a freight train, he did not hide his ambition, nor did the power brokers in Chicago who quickly Velcroed themselves to him and were like, this guy's going to the White House and we're getting him there. Okay, so you can't be dumb and smart at the same time. She can't have no idea who this guy is and suddenly find herself in the White House, but she's so smart, she should go on every podcast and get book deals and Netflix deals to speak to all of us about how we should live our lives, even though she has no idea what she's doing, as she just said. And I'll just lastly close with, and I'm only mentioning this because she is forcing it. She is forcing it. I think she is clearly on Ozempic. I think the weight loss has accelerated to a degree that maybe she cannot even control. And the misery is now showing on her face. She is a manifest. Yes, get a burger and a beer. Jesus, it's summer. She is manifesting complete uncontrolled loss. That's what I think is happening. Just my hot take.
Can I tell you something? I hadn't noticed the weight loss, to be honest, but I think we're all going to be on Ozempic soon in my family because 2 out of my 3 children are working at busboys at an ice cream joint, and I'm there every night now. I'm literally there every night. Just to show support, you know. But I'm 54 and I cannot have the ice cream every night the way the children can with impunity. So.
Right.
You know, don't knock it. So I have a theory about people like Michelle Obama and like the ones who are constantly talking about how hard everything is and how like, you know, remember she's clapped back at Sheryl Sandberg's Lean In, you know, and there was plenty to criticize with Sheryl Sandberg's Lean In, but like Michelle Obama at that time was like, you know, that doesn't always work. And she wasn't talking about for working class people. She was talking about for Black people. She had to play the race card when she was first lady. That, you know, you can't just get what you want if you go after it. This is just she's always been this way. And what I have learned, and this was in part thanks to some of my own journey, and I mentioned the reference to the NBC stint, people who are constantly talking about like self-help and like depression and how hard things are and how to get through them are very depressed. And they are probably not people you should be listening to as your teacher if you are feeling depressed or sad or listless or non-directional. Those actually are not your teachers. What you need is like a Judge Judy. You know, you need a Maureen Callahan, or dare I say an MK. You need somebody who's living a great life, getting after it, putting points on the board, and not spending too much of their time navel gazing into how I don't have a tail. It's really sad, right? Like that's her. She's an Eeyore. And it is, I think, her depression. And she's not somebody we should be seeking guidance or enlightenment from at all.
No, I mean, my personal rule expressed often on my show is if you see someone with a Buddha in their front yard, run. It's always the people who are like...
Your stuff about Hoda is on point. I can speak to that personally.
Thank you. Hoda, Maria Shriver, Oprah, who has just become a robot, a shell of herself, Gayle King, these women, they all speak in these generalities, in these very vague platitudes about, Megyn, if I said to you, you know what, Megyn? I am my most authentic self, and I am on this journey that has led me to a place where I just live in joy. I mean, I would hope you would take me for an MRI. You know, like, what does that sound like?
Well,
it actually sounds like a fully directional person, like an undirectional person, right? A directionless person, as you just said. Like, I don't know I should understand what you're talking about in 5 words or less, right?
Yes. No, and that's how they were. I mean, I told the story before, but one day I went to NBC and we had to do a roundtable discussion on happiness. It was like me, Hoda, Savannah, Jenna. I mean, it was like the whole brain trust. And the question was like, on a scale of 1 to 10, what's your average happiness level? Like, how happy are you generally day to day? And I was like, I don't know, like 6.5, maybe. And they were like, what? They're all looking, they're like, I'm a 10. I'm like, you fucking liars. This is such bullshit. Who's running around every day like, I'm a 10. I mean, I can hit 10, but I'm like a 10 happiness every day. I call bullshit. And P.S., if that were true, then we wouldn't be seeing Hoda with her stupid Making Space app trying to work on everyone else's happiness because it's such a dark, dark world. You need Hoda to see you through.
Let alone people on morning television. Okay, so the morning television cesspool, I adore this. This is a frequent target. So the other day, the Today Show, it's like Craig Melvoin, who just like they slotted him in, Melvin, excuse me. It's terrible. And then he's got these two, Dylan Dreyer, who's like a very generic cookie cutter. And then a third one, I can't remember. But anyway, they were supposed to be doing a segment like they had just come back from Alaska. They were doing a segment about what great friends they are. And they had brought Craig back something from the airport gift shop. And they start talking about how when they travel for work as NBC colleagues for the Today Show, Craig doesn't want to talk to any of them. He makes it very clear. He puts on the headphones, he puts on the sleep mask, and he's like, don't sit next to me. And they started talking about how none of them can actually stand each other off the air while they're smiling through it, to the point where Al Roker says, you guys realize we're on the air, correct? So I love it. Keep giving me all of the advice, all of the pro tips for living my best, most self-actualized life through morning television, where typically the pro tip is like, oh my God, Chris McMillan the other day, Jen Aniston's hairstylist was cutting Jenna into a bob.
I heard you talk about this.
What do you say to the average woman out there who wants to go get her hair changed up? And he goes, well, you know what you should do? You should find a picture of a celebrity and you should put it on your phone, and then you should bring it to your hairstylist.
Wait, hold on. Stand by. Writing this down. Picture, phone. Okay, got it. Thank you. I'm so glad I tuned in. It's such powerful.
Right. What would you have done otherwise? These are the pro tips that they're really, yeah.
And then you pointed out, and you're on the nerve, that there's somebody off camera when Jenna, I guess she's getting her hair at the time cut into a bob, saying like, "You're so brave. You're so brave." She stormed the beach at Normandy now because she had some inches taken off her hair.
She's such a badass. Like, she's a regular Johnny Cash getting a bob. It was Leslie Bibb. I don't know if you guys watched season 3 of The White Lotus, but it's one of those.
Okay. Yeah, I did watch season 3. Which one of those 3 women who were so nasty to each other? Those 3? Mm-hmm. Okay, that was another. She was
the conservative Texan.
Oh yeah. Oh God. Okay. Yeah. You mentioned 2 people who are a good segue into our next topic: Oprah and Gayle. Oprah and Gayle this weekend are in Venice, watching their dear, dear lifelong friends Jeff Bezos and Lauren Sanchez get married. Because that's what you do when you are Jeff Bezos and Lauren Sanchez. You invite only your close. I mean, you're literally one of the richest men in the world, worth $250 billion. So you'd make sure that you only invite the people who love you for you. The people who were there before you built Amazon. Like Gayle, like Tom Brady, like all of the Kardashians who are there, like Orlando Bloom. It's super tight. Literally 2 out of the 6 space morons have been invited. Right? It's like Lauren Sanchez is one, but they invited Gayle and they invited Katy Perry, who's not going. This is exactly what Meghan and Harry did. The bigger your name, the more likely you were to get an invite, because what matters to them is that it's a star-studded event, not that they have dear friends who love them standing up for them when they take a sacred vow.
Yeah, I think there are only 200 guests. It's a for people this wealthy and famous and powerful.
Yeah.
It's a small guest list, and it reminded me. It's so funny you said Harry and Meghan, because I've never respected Reese Witherspoon more, because she was allegedly invited to the Harry and Meghan wedding, and she declined the invite, saying, "I don't know them." And I thought that was so amazing, because like, I think there might be a part of me that would be like, I want to see the spectacle. I wonder what it would be like to like have a front row or a back row seat, whatever to it. But, you know, it was Oprah at the wedding. And it's also this kind of like, just like when I saw Tom Brady disembarking and Scooter Braun and a Kardashian, like all, like, I think Diddy's losing his mind at MDC
Jared
right now.
and Ivanka are going.
That's like, these are his people, oiled up Kardashians in cat suits exiting water taxis and obscene foam parties thrown on private yachts. To me, just my opinion, it feels very freak off adjacent. It feels very decadent. I wonder how much of this stuff is taking place on open water to get around other countries' laws, you know? It feels like a freak show, and it just feels very just like it's aggressively an FU to the rest of us who are just grinding it out day to day. I mean, look at her bouncing around. It is like bouncing around with her pneumatic boobs, and like like it's just disgusting. And you know, Oprah and Gayle, I have a theory. I just think Oprah's around too many dark people. I just think she is. And I think she's really soiling her legacy. And then how does Gayle King go back to CBS Mornings and her job and pretend that she's anything approaching a journalist running around with people like this?
No, it's ridiculous. And can I tell you something? So all I can think of, maybe it's just me because I'm, you know, really a regular person. When I watch all that foam on that yacht, I'm thinking, imagine, like, I'd be worried that my fancy yacht was going to get stained by weird chemicals that came from the foam. Like, this is so excessive. You have an enormous yacht. Your yacht has a yacht to hold all of your toys. And also, I'm told, Lauren Sanchez's weird girl pals who he doesn't want on the main yacht. And then on top of that, you risk spoiling your yacht with a bunch of foam that I went to a party one time years ago where they had foam in their huge swimming pool outdoors, by the way, in Texas. And it was super fun. That didn't pose any risk. We were outdoors. It was a big actual outdoor swimming pool. This is on a yacht. I just feel like the excessiveness of it is it's the same thing as like fanning out your money and with a middle finger in front of it for the paparazzi. That's who it is, because they call the paparazzi. I am 100% convinced. Yeah. I was just telling Paul Murray when I did his show on Sky News, I was just on a boat for a week in Greece. You know why I didn't get photographed on the boat in Greece? Because I didn't go call the paparazzi and say, hey, I'm on a boat in Greece. Come take my picture. There is a reason these two always happen to get shot while on their yacht. Same with J-Lo. Have you ever missed a J-Lo appearance on a yacht? Never. We just happened to see him smacking her ass. We just happened to see the foam party. So they want us to be looking at this, Maureen, which is a real middle finger with the money splayed out Marie Antoinette moment.
Well, later I want to hear all about your Greece trip via boat. But the thing so I also believe that this is, I columned on it for the Mail the other day, and I called it Jeff Bezos's big fat incel wedding. Because I think so much of this has always been, ever since he split with Mackenzie Scott and, you know, his extramarital relationship with Lauren came to light. They've both undergone significant physical transformations. Her face has become a sea of injectables, a repository for injectables, as have apparently her breasts and her butt. Jeff has transformed himself into some sort of very taut, muscular, bald, glowing personage that to me resembles a walking penis. The foam party feels very frat boy to me. It's like, look at me. Like the foam coming out is like a huge ejaculation of like, look at my sexual prowess. I am a hot guy. And this one I'm marrying, I'm actually having sex with her. Can you guys believe this? Can you believe it?
It's so true. He does. I'm sorry. He does look like a walking penis. We showed this. I don't know if this is the before and after, but look at this. This is the before and after. this is what Jeff Bezos actually looks like on the left. And then here he is over on the right, post whatever he's doing. Maybe it's just hitting the gym in the same way Jennifer Aniston is just drinking a lot of water. But I'd venture to say some other things have happened there to make him look like that. But you're right. He's like so bald and his head is so round. He does look a little too taut and it does give penis vibes. I'm not going to lie. It's not a good look for him. And I don't know what she's doing because she, unlike him, she was more beautiful before. Like she was actually very pretty when she was just normal. And now, I mean, she's my age. I don't know what she's done. All I can say is I think plastic surgery is addictive for some people. And they think they've got to keep one upping. They have one thing done and they get compliments on it. And then they're like, oh, I have to have 10 other things. And then like when that procedure starts to wane, like the filler starts to like dissolve or whatever it does, they're like, I need more. And if a little was good, more must be good. And now she's made her face look like deformed. It's sad.
I also wonder how much of what she looks like now is Jeff's dictates. Like, this is what you're going to look like. You know, we saw it with Diddy, you know, the testimony, and it was in Cassie's original complaint where he made her go get breast implants. And she came out of that surgery and he was like, I don't like the way these look. And he took her back to that doctor and said, remove them and put new ones in. And there's, you know, that's a horror story. But I feel as though this entire thing is such a farce. Number one, not least because we just learned they got married a month ago. They've been legally married for a month. Right. Okay, so this is just a big F-U. Look at how much money we have, the people we can buy. We can buy the city of Venice, which the residents, the Venetians, do not want them there. But I also think that Lauren Sanchez, we talk about this all the time. The more someone protests to the contrary, the more likely the opposite is to be true. Lauren Sanchez living her best life? I don't think so. I think she's paying a very, very, very high price to be the next Mrs. Jeff Bezos. And I think she has to look the way he wants. I think she has to look like a sex doll. I think it was his idea. This is just my opinion. For her to go to the Trump inauguration in a low-cut, cleavage-bearing tuxedo jacket, to have Mark Zuckerberg, another incel-y tech guy, openly ogle her, you know, and be shot by this is humiliation.
So let me say something about this. So you're right. And she is starting to look like a blow-up doll. And it's sad, too, because we have her before and after. She used to be very pretty. She was a news anchor. And she's a helicopter pilot. Like, she's not a moron. This is, I think, her, I don't know if she was married to this guy, but they were together. This is before. Who is it, Steve? Tony. Oh, he's a football player. Tony Gonzalez. Okay. And she's starting to transform. Then she marries the head of CAA, one of the co-heads of CAA, or maybe it was WMG, Patrick Whitesell. And that's when she reportedly had an affair with Jeff Bezos, and we all saw their steamy text messages, which had been leaked. He was still married to Mackenzie. She was married to that Patrick guy. And then she's changed just dramatically since she started up with Bezos. And I can't help but wonder, like, the amount of pressure that she's under, because it seems clear why he's into her, to not put on an extra ounce, to not let what happens to a 55-year-old ass happen, to like go yet another size bigger on the breasts, which she's steadily gone upward. I can't imagine living my life like that for the pleasure of somebody. And I guess the inherent deal is, but you get all the money. And it's just, I mean, worth it? No.
No. And, you know, just from knowing what I've known just in my research on billionaires, like, I doubt she's his one and only. I doubt it. She's the woman who is his official and who will accompany him to things like state dinners, what have you. But those guys, they're not really built for that kind of a life. And I think even in her choice of friends, again, like, she did have stuff going on. She was a journalist. She was a helicopter pilot. She came from nothing and made something of herself. But she's in this position now in life, and she has access to the world's finest minds, and she chooses to befriend the likes of Kris Jenner, the Kardashian clan, and Katy Perry.
Well, that's actually what I was trying to get to, and I forgot my point. Why does he like her to be showing her ass in public, to be dressed half naked in public, to show up at the inauguration with her tits hanging out? Why does he like that? Because I can tell you, in my marriage, which actually is loving and fun and the opposite of miserable, Michelle, my husband does not encourage me to run around showing off my vag or anything else. In fact, I did one racy photo shoot when I turned 40 for GQ. I was pregnant with Yardley at the time, and I was like, what the hell? I guess it'll be a marker in time. And Doug thought he liked the pictures, and he was like, you look great, babe. He's like, I think that one gets it done. Like, and we made clear, like, I totally get what you were doing, no problems whatsoever, but like, wouldn't want to make this a habit. And I agreed with him. It's like, why does he want to see the love of his life showing her tits off to President Trump? I mean, it's a legit question.
No, I take it very seriously. I think there's a couple of things going on. I think, again, to the sort of idea that this is his teenage incel, this is his teenage dream of a wedding. This is his rage has come to the surface at all of the rejection that he no doubt suffered from women he felt he was punching above his weight, who he couldn't get with. As a teenager in high school, as a kid in college, he knew he was a genius. That was clear, but that wasn't enough to get the hot girl, the fun girl. So now we have to have Lauren Sanchez spreading her cheeks on his yacht and thrusting them at the nearest long-lensed paparazzi photographer so that he can prove his sexual virility while also humiliating her to a degree by making it clear on the world stage that she is an acquisition and she does what he says. Just my theory.
You're right. We have no idea. We don't know them personally. We're just observing based on their patterns of behavior. But look, to me, there's no way this lasts. I do not think this is a marriage made in heaven. The phrase, you lose them how you get them, generally applies. And that doesn't bode well for either of them. There was a report in Daily Mail that they did get married already and that he had her sign a prenup, which I certainly hope he was smart enough to do. I'm sure she's going to get some big settlement even if they do divorce, but there's just the odds of this lasting extremely slim. I'll say one nice thing since I've said so many non-nice things about them. Well, I said some nice things about her. I don't think she's a bad person. I'd much rather spend an hour with her than with him. But I respect the fact that he chose a woman who's age appropriate. I will say that. He's, I think, 62. She's 55. Like the Leonardo DiCaprio thing with only the 25-year-old women is very creepy, Maureen. It freaks me out. I don't understand men who are stuck in that mode. I think it's to his credit that he chose somebody who is age appropriate and is, came up at the same time generally he did.
I agree with you. I also feel like we're at such a point in the culture where it's such a low bar where we have to be like, yay, he chose a woman of his own generation. Like, wow. Wow. Listen, Megyn, I'll be the cynic. I will be the open cynic. I'm telling you. I think there are a couple of 20-year-olds stashed away somewhere.
Oh, God.
Just a theory of the crime. Just a theory.
Well, I mean, who am I to disagree? But I have to say, Doug and I have talked about this many times. So I'm 9 months older than Doug, but come August, he will hit my number, as he always does. I love August. And but we laugh because it's such a pleasure being married to somebody my age. I have to say, I love it. And Doug loves it too. Like, I live for those sites on Instagram and even some on Twitter that do like 70s runs and Gen X stuff. I love those videos so much because it really does take you back when, like, the ones that show like whatever, those icicles, those sort of icicles and those plastic things that we used to squeeze up, slowly out of the thing. Kool-Aid in the Kool-Aid pitcher that had the face on the front of it, the rainbow shirt the rainbow went from one arm to the other right across your chest. I love all these fun references, and Doug gets all of those references because he was a kid then too. I can't imagine what it would be like in one of these real May-December romances where you've got like 30 years or 40 years separating you to have to explain every reference. It could be
exhausting. Megyn, I mean, Bill Belichick and Jordan, whatever her name is, are here to disabuse us of that, right? I'm sure they're having sparkling conversation every minute of the day.
And animal sex
he was 50
too,
when she was born. yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. All right. We got to take a break. You know how much my family and I love our dogs. Yes, even Strudwick. I cannot imagine life without them. They have a great life, but some dogs are not so lucky. And that's why I'm so glad to tell you about Delta Rescue, the largest no-kill, care-for-life animal sanctuary in the world. They have rescued thousands of dogs, plus cats and horses too. They provide all the animals with shelter and safety, and most of all, love. And they've been doing it for more than 45 years now. Delta Rescue relies solely on contributions, and giving can bring tax benefits too. Speak to your estate planner about how you can grow your estate while helping animals in need, and check out the estate planning tab on their website to learn more. We love our Thunder in Strudwick, but would like other dogs who need love to find it too. Visit deltarescue.org today to learn more. That's deltarescue.org. Somebody big is leaving a very big post. This may be a clue to all of you on who I'm talking about. It's SOT28.
No, it's just baffling to me. Why is it so impossible to put together a decent run-through? You people have had hours and hours to prepare. It's just so confusing to me. Where are the advertisers?
We have some pieces from Banana Republic.
Well, we need more, don't we? Oh, this might be. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, you know me. Give me a full ballerina skirt and a hint of saloon, and I'm on board.
But do you think it's too much like...
Like a La Croix from July? I thought that, but no, not with the right accessories. It should work.
Where are the belts for this strap? Why is no one ready?
Here. It's a tough call. They're so different.
Something funny?
No, nothing's, it's just that both those belts look exactly the same to me. I'm still learning about this stuff and,
This stuff?
I speak, of course, of Anna Wintour, brilliantly portrayed there by Meryl Streep in The Devil Wears Prada, which was a great movie. And I can love Meryl's portrayal of Anna Wintour while completely loathing the original myself. And that's pretty much where I land. She's stepping down as editor-in-chief of Vogue after she's been doing it for, I think, 200 years. And staying in control, Maureen, of Condé Nast and all of its publications. I forgot that Wired was one of them. That explains how insane Wired went on the Imane Khalif coverage. It's like, why is this tech magazine going off trying to tell me that this man is a woman in the international boxing arena? And now I remember that it's because it's a Condé Nast publication and she runs it effectively. She's on the top of it, among many other publications from Vanity Fair to Vogue and beyond. But stepping down as editor-in-chief of Vogue is big. And I, for one, am really hoping this is the first step out of the public eye altogether. You?
I'm shocked by this news. I literally thought, not to be crass, like she would leave Vogue feet first, she would die at that desk. She wasn't going anywhere. It is and has been her life being at Vogue. And I am sure she was pushed out. This is just my theory of the case. But this marks her 37th year as editor-in-chief, or marked. It's not a nice round number. It's not 35. It's not 40. It's not, Anna's going to go at 75, which she is now. She's age 75. She installed, according to page 6, their exclusive report, unilaterally went behind the back of Condé CEO Roger Lynch and installed a know-nothing friend of her daughter's to run Vanity Fair after she ran it into the ground after Graydon left. That was the last great gasp of a general interest magazine in America. That was a once great publication, and she installed Radhika Jones, this humorless, I think not very talented editor who made it woke and boring. And, I love this for her, because if she was in fact pushed out, the level of cruelty and sadism she has dished out these many years, now she's going to find herself pretty much alone with her thoughts and her back issues of Vogue.
Right, because it's like, we're going to continue this discussion, SiriusXMers over on pod and youtube.com/Megyn Kelly, because we can't say goodbye to Maureen yet. There's a lot to go over still. By the way, update for you on the Diddy trial coming too as it breaks here. But the person who wrote the book that led to the movie Devil Wears Prada was in fact an assistant to Anna Wintour for some time. I think she was like the second assistant. And she wrote about how, as portrayed in the movie, she had her first assistant. That was the only one really allowed to talk to her. And then she had a second and a third to do more menial tasks. And she would refer to the second and possibly the third by the first assistant's name. She couldn't be bothered to have more than one name for her assistants. And there were strict rules about like talking to her, strict rules about exactly what it needed to be waiting for her when she got to the office. And, you know, God help the young assistant who didn't live up to these rules. And I do wonder in the post-Me Too era, which captured not only sex predators, but bullies, she was left standing. So yes, 2 or 3 assistants, calling the assistants the wrong name. The assistant said she was told never to leave her desk, even to go to the bathroom if the other assistant wasn't there. God forbid Anna come out of her office and not have somebody to abuse. That they dropped off the book for her at her home, just as portrayed in the movie, which is the draft markup of Vogue. It would be delivered in a monogrammed LL Bean canvas tote with navy handles, along with her burgundy crocodile designer planner. She would come to the office and every day have a whole milk latte and a blueberry muffin from Starbucks. Zero evidence of that is shown on the woman's figure, which she looks like a stick figure. And then she would every day, have the same thing for lunch, a rare steak and mashed potatoes, of which she would take only a few bites and then say, "Take my plate, I'm done." So in any event, that's just her weird picadillos on the way she lives her life. What amazes me, though, is how she was not brought down as the bully that she clearly is when we decided around 2018 we weren't going to allow that. How did Ellen DeGeneres get bounced and Anna Wintour remained?
Such a great question. You remember her covering her ass in the wake of Black Lives Matter? You know, and people were training
including
their sights on Vogue.
At this year's Met
Gala. Right, the Craven. Like we're doing, like the woman who was Naomi Campbell, the first Black supermodel or model she put on the cover under her tenure. It took forever. How many Black designers did this woman champion? How many Black people in the fashion industry? And by the way, you going back through all that Devil Wears Prada amazing detail, I remember when that book came out, when they were like leaking the book and the details and like, it was so fantastic. It was so unbelievable. People were like, this has to be fiction. This woman has to be embellishing. It can't be that bad. It's Vogue. It's not it's not SEAL Team 6, you know, that she's training over there. And it turned out to be that bad.
Yeah.
That bad.
Bore someone else with your questions. I love that line from the movie. Like, give me the skirt.
Yes, and I loved, now that we're actresses, we can discuss this on a deeper level than maybe we would have before. But Meryl Streep's choice to be terrifying by lowering her voice to a near whisper at all times is like the madder she was, the lower and quieter the voice got. That was brilliant, really.
Truly scary. And I love the line in that movie where Stanley Tucci is standing next to the Andy character, the young assistant, and he goes, "Did someone have an onion bagel?" She's like, "You're not even allowed to eat like that around the core." Listen, I did get to meet her and spend some time with her, Anna Wintour, back in the days when they thought I was a secret Democrat housed up in the evil Fox News, just looking to take down people like Trump. And she was an intimidating personality who really thought, you know, her you-know-what didn't stink. I mean, she's really, really in love with her own opinion and look. Meanwhile, she's offering me like these fashion tips. I'm like, what makes you think I want your fashion tips? Just because you're editor of Vogue, I don't give a shit what you think about. How are you supposed to dress as a litigator? Like you would know anything, or like a journalist who needs credibility but actually needs people to stop when they're channel surfing. That's why they put the ladies of Fox News in bright neon colors. It's not because they have an obsession.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, it was like, you don't know shit. You may know shit about Vogue and your weird belts, but you don't actually know what works on cable news or in my old business. Like, you don't know everything about everything. She just has an arrogance and a nastiness to her, and that I have lived firsthand, that it's a miracle to me it's taken till age 75 if she was given the boot for it to happen that way.
I also was reminded recently that when Johnny Depp was portraying Willy Wonka, half of his inspiration was Anna Wintour and her hair and the sunglasses.
What?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. Tim Burton admitted it. It was half Michael Jackson and it was half Anna Wintour. And I thought, first of all, that's genius. And secondly, what a cut to Anna Wintour, who clearly thinks she is an icon for the ages. She's never going to get that ambassadorship, Megyn.
Yeah, that's
the
not
one
happening.
she wants.
No matter how much ass kissing she's done of Democrat politicians. We actually pulled a couple of sound bites of her talking because, as you know, Melania Trump has been on the cover of Vogue one time from, I think, 2003 when she married Donald, not as first lady. And it was like, Donald Trump chooses a bride. She was only interesting to them because she had married Donald Trump. Yeah, Donald Trump's new bride. Okay. But as first lady, which she's now been for 4.5 years, not once, not inside the magazine with the big spread, not on the cover. It's ridiculous. She's obviously the most beautiful first lady we've had in recent memory. And instead, 3 times for Jill Biden, who has zero fashion sense. 3 times for Michelle Obama. Misery Obama made it 3 times. Who, I'm sorry, also has no fashion sense, but Anna Wintour talked about Michelle Obama like she was Naomi Campbell. It was ridiculous. Here's just a little bit of her packing the praise on for her favorite Democrat females, SOT 27.
I believe Secretary Clinton, when she was First Lady, was the first Lady to be on the cover of Vogue.
She was. I felt that the First Lady at that time had behaved in a
She's wearing her sunglasses.
brave way. We felt it was a time to, to support
ridiculous.
her and to stand up for women. We were also very honored, obviously. I think Mrs. Obama was on the cover 3 times. I think Mrs. Obama redefined the role of the First Lady. I mean, she was so open to everybody. She made the White House a place for everyone. I mean, and she was just so, I think, inspiring to so many women.
First Lady Michelle Obama really was so incredible and in every decision she made about fashion. She was the best ambassador that this country could possibly have.
But she's not the First Lady now. So what about the one that you've got now?
And to me, she is the example that I admire.
If you're talking about the First Lady or Senator Harris, obviously these are women that we feel are icons and inspiring to women from a global perspective.
She was talking about Jill Biden there when she was first lady. It's stomach turning, and it's not true. Michelle Obama has a terrible sense of fashion. I'm sorry, but tune into her podcast if you don't believe me.
I will lay the blame for Michelle Obama's forthcoming book called The Look, which should be subtitled, Look at How Glamorous and Beautiful and Inspirational I Am. I will lay that delusion at the feet of one Anna Wintour, who then put the minute that Joe Biden announced he was picking Kamala as his running mate, they did a hastily assembled photo shoot with Kamala on the cover. Talk about Gen X, putting her on the cover in a business suit with her Converse high tops on to show she was cool. Low cuts or whatever. Yeah, and then I was just looking very closely at the Vogue cover of Melania that you put up right there, and it looks like her head is swathed in a kind of veil. Like, could we even see her face? Like, that seems like a very Anna Wintour kind of like, I'm going to shiv you a little bit. I had to put you on the cover for myriad reasons, but I'm going to shiv you a little bit. It's all, and the other thing is I was going through clipped, I was sort of fast forwarding a reviewing of the September issue, that documentary about Anna and Vogue that came out in 2009. And what really struck me, unlike The Devil Wears Prada, where her minions they look like models. They're well-dressed. They have beautiful skin, beautiful clothes, beautiful hair, all of it. Her staff looks like they were just freed by Hamas. They have like skin that is breaking out and blotchy and parched and dry, and they look malnourished and underfed, and their hair is like frizzy and unkempt, and they're always on edge because they don't know what this tyrant is going to do or say to them next. And it's like, it's fashion.
Yeah, right.
Fashion.
Take a breath. Yeah, it's really not that important. She went on in that interview, but I want to make this point actually before I play this. Christiane Amanpour, who's a leftist hack, is sitting there for the listening audience while Michelle Obama is saying, while Anna Wintour is talking about Michelle Obama as like, she changed the model. She welcomed everyone into the White House. And Christiane Amanpour's got her hand on her face, like nodding and smiling, like, yes, yes, our leader, our heroine. And to me, this is quietly racist and toxic, because the reason they feel the need to go so over the top on how fabulous Michelle Obama is to prove that they're not racist. I'm telling you, that's what's happening there. They wouldn't have been that obsequious about Jill Biden. They feel the need to show like, I love Michelle Obama, so I'm not racist. See, I love Michelle Obama. No, I love her more than you do. I'm shaking my head. Yes, I'm saying yes, yes, me too. I get it. I asked the question about her to begin with. Well, I put her on the cover of Vogue 3 times, so I love her more. This is 2 privileged, white guilt-ridden women trying to telegraph that I like Michelle Obama. She's a black woman. That means I'm a good person. That's what I see when I look at those 2 Nimrods have that conversation about Michelle Obama, who did not have an amazing fashion sense at all. She was wearing very plain Jane sheath dresses while she was first lady. And since she's been out on her own, it's been an utter disaster what she wears. She rivals only Blake Lively for how bad her fashion sense is. Here she is talking about, clearly, why certain women get selected for Vogue and others don't. SOT 26.
Your magazine, the most important fashion Bible in the world, does profile some very, very important women who are in politics. Tell me about that. I mean, you're overtly political in your profiles and in what you stand for.
I think one has to be fair, one has to look at all sides, but I don't think it's a moment not to take a stand. Mm-hmm. I think you can't be everything to everybody. We profile women in the magazine that we believe in the stand that they're taking on issues. We support them in the fact that we feel that they are leaders.
Okay.
So I'm wondering if this interview took place before or after Anna infamously sent a journalist to interview the First Lady of Syria, whose husband was torturing his own citizens,
Bashar al-Assad,
to tell us how stylish and groundbreaking this woman was. You know, and it's the blowback seemed to catch Anna by surprise. And what I've always thought about Anna, the sunglasses, I think, are a major sign of insecurity, and or not visual eye issues, but I think like maybe the skin around her eyes was aging in a way that she did not like, and that was her. It's a flex, but it's also a sign of insecurity. But you know, she always has lived in the shadow of her father, who is known as Chilly Charlie Wintour, who was an editor-in-chief at I forget the London paper, the UK paper. And then I think her siblings are like extremely accomplished in the private sector, like real intellects. And she has said, I was kind of the dumb one. And I think that's what a lot of this is about.
Well, my team is telling me that Syria remark was 2012. So this would have been, and that what I just showed you of her on Amanpour was 2019. So it would have been after. So yeah, she chooses everybody for a reason, Maureen. Look, I think it's amazing. I don't know why Anna Wintour stays and Ellen DeGeneres goes. It must be something about Ellen DeGeneres was a star and had a show, but she didn't control Hollywood. But Anna Wintour controls publishing. I mean, there isn't a magazine hardly that she doesn't touch. And I think she was just too big and was making them too much money, including up to 2018, for them to mess with her. She was like, I just think she was too big and too scary in a way that Ellen wasn't. I think I was fine with what happened to Ellen. I think I've heard so many terrible stories about Ellen, even worse than the ones that have come out about her. I think she's genuinely a terrible, nasty person. But I think that's true of Anna Wintour too. And I think her time in the power seat has been extended far too long. All right, I want to keep going because we still have some things to get to. Can I round back to the Diddy trial with you?
Please.
Okay. We just found out it's 2:00 Eastern, just about. And the defense has not yet rested. They went to lunch. He said he has another hour. And then the prosecution gets the last word because they have the burden of proof. They said they have a 90-minute rebuttal. That's normal. Whoever has the burden of proof usually gets to speak first and last. And then then they're going to charge the jury with the jury instructions. And then they believe that the deliberations will start on Monday. Now they're saying the jury will get the charge on Monday morning. So that means closings will take the rest of the day. Then they'll send the jury home. And then the jury will get charged on Monday morning and the deliberations won't start until then. So it'd be a really interesting thing to see how long they take, Maureen. Is it an OJ thing where they all go in there and they're like, no, I don't think he did it. Me neither. No. And to this shock of everyone, they're back in the courtroom. It was like under an hour to say not guilty. Or is it a different thing where maybe they all feel the same or close to the same, but they want to at least project to the world that they're taking it seriously and they really wrestled with it, and they take a few days to argue with one another or possibly even have a hung jury, because all it takes is one. Diddy does not have to convince everybody he's not guilty. He just has to convince one of them who can hang the jury, and then the prosecution would have to decide if it wants to do it all over again. So what are you thinking? I mean, you're a New Yorker. New Yorkers, it tends to be a left-leaning city. They are no nonsense. It's very hard to fool them. Although it did happen in the Trump case, in the Trump criminal case. But I think that was a political thing, in my view. I don't think they'll be predisposed to hate Diddy. But I think by this point in the trial, they probably do. Because if you've been paying any attention at all, you do. So what are your predictions, if any?
As I said before, I do think New Yorkers, we've been living with Sean Combs for a very long time, and you say to me nightclub shooting in the 90s, I remember just about everything about that. Everybody knows this guy's bad news. He's a dangerous guy. What I wonder is, I don't know, again, you know far more about this than I do, but if I'm giving my 90-minute rebuttal and sending the jury off for a weekend with that, as July 4th approaches, I'm sure they're going to come back with a verdict before the holiday weekend. There's no question. I'm going to say Wednesday at the absolute latest.
Yes.
And I think they're going to find him guilty of, as you said, at least one, but probably all of these criminal acts, these depraved violence. The violence against women is just depraved. But I wonder, my thought is who are they going to be talking to over the weekend? How does this not come up?
They're not sequestered.
They're human beings.
That's right. They're not sequestered. They did, of course, hit the domestic violence thing, but Mark Agnifilo in his closing. And he handled it the way he had to. He says, let's be clear. There are things Mr. Combs has done. There are things he's not proud of. Domestic violence, we own it. That happened. That's real. And if that were the charge, you wouldn't even be here because he would have pled guilty because he did that. But Mr. Combs has not been charged with domestic violence. He's been charged with racketeering, with sex trafficking, with being the head of some criminal empire. And he did not do all that. He's not going to lie. He's not going to pretend. But he's also not going to roll over and accept something he didn't do. No, he will fight to the death for the truth. He did what he did, but not what they are accusing him of now. Then he says this, Maureen. We're just going to talk person to person, truth to truth. Because this case isn't about a criminal enterprise. It's about a failed relationship. It's about a love story gone sour. And the government wants you to believe that Cassie Ventura was just some passive, powerless figure, that she was dragged along, voiceless, helpless. But that's not what the evidence shows. Cassie, she's not a victim in this courtroom. She's the winner. She walked away with $30 million. He's in jail. She made her choices, and she made them with agency, intelligence, and strength. Their sex life, it was mutual. It was consensual. You could even say it was in sync. Swingers, if you really want to give it a label. But no one was forcing her. No one. Cassie Ventura is a grown woman who actually enjoys sex. And I say, good for her. Oh my God, Maureen. But that's not a crime. That's not trafficking. That's not coercion. And let's not forget her relationship with Kid Cudi. You remember that? When I brought it up, I said it then and I'll say it again. Cassie keeping it gangster, because she was allegedly having a relationship with both of them at the same time. She's not some timid, terrified victim hiding in the shadows. She's playing both sides, bold as ever, lying to both men without flinching. You think she was scared of Sean Combs? Oh, please. That's the crux of the defense. And I'm sorry, but like if the jury buys this, I feel like it's setting women back by decades. That like, it's powerful. Like somehow you just look at somebody who's complaining that she's been beaten and you say, you're strong. Don't be a victim. You go, girl. You handled it. You're like, what?
I wonder, it sounds like something Bill Maher would write, frankly. Was Arthur Aidala the one who delivered the closing?
He's on the Harvey case.
I thought he was also on Diddy. Mark Agnifilo. So
Mark Agnifilo, he's the Keith Raniere lawyer.
Did he deliver that in court?
Yes.
Yes. So I think that's a very risky play to put that, to have a male, first of all, deliver the closing and then tell, I don't know how many women constitute that jury, but tell women, this is what constitutes abuse. And I am telling you that this one was in it for the money and the power. And the subtext to me feels like she's a scorned woman. And so this is where we're at. This is female. This is a jealous, bitter woman. Okay. Who would take a beating for, I don't understand how this even got out of their offices. This is the closing argument. I agree with you. If this works, it sets women. We saw the video. The video. He was beating the living crap out of her, and then he dragged her by a limb or by her hair. And we're supposed to believe she's either strong enough to take it, or she was so strong she just abided it because it was the cost of doing business to be in a relationship with Sean Combs. And then she had the temerity to possibly be dating two men at once. I mean, do you ever hear men talked about in that manner?
This is ridiculous. He had another person on the side and multiple people, the entire relationship with Cassie, which was over a decade, not to mention Jane. That was one of her chief complaints, that she was like the one behind closed doors and he had all these other women he would actually be seen at dinner with. But this is exactly what he tried to do in the Keith Raniere case, Maureen. The exact same thing. I interviewed him before that case and he told me what he was going to argue and he did argue it and he lost. Keith Raniere's in jail for life. And he said to remember this is a case in which it was like a sex cult in Albany, New York. And he got these women to like follow him as their cult leader. It was my friend Catherine Oxenberg's daughter India Oxenberg, who got swept up into this. And some of these women, including India, got branded with his initials. And we've had some of these women on the show to talk about the horrific nature of the whole thing. Anyway, Agnifilo's defense of Keith Raniere was, this is New York. We don't do sex slave, all right? Women have agency. They're empowered. And it's like, okay, good luck with that because New Yorkers are tough, but they can also see a manipulative bastard when they are presented with one. And they had Cassie on the stand, I think, for 5-6 days. Jane was on the stand, I think, for 8. Like, especially Cassie was sweet and soft-spoken and demure and like a kitten. I mean, you just wanted to kind of rescue her and help her. She did not project like, oh yeah, I'm playing two guys against the other. Like, not at all. To me, the Kid Cudi thing seemed like a possible window out of an abusive relationship with a guy who seemed kind of sweet. This guy, Kid Cudi, seemed kind of nice and not like some manipulative bitch. And even her texts were like, I love it when we're both into it, when we're both into it. But like, I just don't think the jury's going to look at her and say like, yeah, she actually enjoys sex. Good for her. We saw her get beaten. And the testimony was it happened over and over and over. And then Jane comes on. There was another woman who testified he beat her. Like, I just don't think this is going to fly, but I do think it's the only thing he could do, Maureen.
I agree. And I also think that the argument, if I'm a juror paying close attention and I'm reading things and I'm dismissing his argument from the get because he says Sean did those things, like the domestic abuse, if he would have pled guilty to that. Well, no, he would not. I disagree because he denied that that happened until the videotape was published by CNN. And then he did that really ridiculous, very pathetic, self-recorded apology to everyone in which it was all about him, right? I'm sorry. I'm trying to work on myself. Sometimes we do things that disappoint ourselves. There was nothing about the victims here. So and again, as a New Yorker, a lifelong New Yorker, I remember, and this is still talked about in the hip hop community, somebody else took the fall for that nightclub shooting. Sean Combs made sure that happened. And I don't see him as a guy who like stands up and takes ownership of the things that he does wrong. So it's already, he's lost me there.
Yeah, no, as the kids say, oh, hell no. Hell no. Absolutely not. He wouldn't have. It's a joke. The only reason they're saying that is because it's on camera and they can't wiggle anymore. I don't know. If he gets acquitted, Maureen, you got to come back on and we've got to talk about what it means, because it's just
absolutely.
I don't know. I think he's not going to be acquitted, but it's not out of the realm of possibility because of just, I mean, it must be said that like the storm of crime that we were told was going to come around him didn't. You know, I realize they're saying he committed an arson on Kid Cudi's car and that he committed a kidnapping with his employee when he brought her over, Capricorn Clark, to Kid Cudi's. But like the over the top like parties or everybody was going to go down as having watched it and participated in abuse, that didn't materialize. And even like, I don't know, just their evidence around him it boils down to like these long-term sexual relationships he had with a couple of women and these freak-offs that he allegedly used his staff to but to set up for and then clean up from. And yes, drugs and related sort of petty crime around it. And at the same time, he was an abuser of these women. Without question, he was a physical abuser of them. I gotta say, I expected more at the beginning, like when they raided the house. And so I'm not guaranteeing a conviction. I rarely would, but like other than on transportation of prostitutes, you know, like that one he's getting convicted on. But on the other two, they've styled an interesting case that does meet the modern day definition of sex trafficking, but it's probably not going to be something the jury is familiar with as sex trafficking for that second claim, nor are they going to be familiar with a crime boss that looks or acts exactly like this.
I'm going to hold out some optimism here. And I have a lot of faith in New York juries, and I have since Harvey, you know, since that jury, that was 7 men, I believe, and 5 women who heard this very complicated testimony that his alleged victims who got up on that stand continued to have sex with him sometimes, emailed him, continued to socialize with him, put in writing, I can't wait to introduce you to my mother. And they came to understand that sexual assault survivors and rape survivors often behave in ways that do not seem logical or linear. And I think that I also kind of think that Sean Combs overplayed his hand with his presentation in court as like your friendly neighborhood accountant who just sort of got swept up into this federal prosecution, who's just delivering heart hands, like Taylor Swift heart hands in court and toting his Bible everywhere. It's just like, how did this happen? Like, I think that was an overcorrection that will not play well.
The prosecutor, anticipating that defense argument, said in her closing, domestic violence, this was force. These freak-offs were forced. Control was his goal, and brought up like the extortion that he basically did over them to threaten them if they left him. You know, I'll stop paying your rent. I'll call your baby daddy and show him the videos. I'll release the videos to the press. And you know what else the prosecutor mentioned in her closing, Maureen, was the thing we discussed when you and I last talked about this case. The $20,000 payment he demanded from Cassie's mom, who was barely making her mortgage and had to take out a home equity loan to try to pay him, or he was going to publicly humiliate Cassie. And she paid him, and then he wound up giving it back. But $20,000 was nothing to Diddy. He just did it to harass not just Cassie, but her family, to show everyone a lesson of what happens when you cross Diddy. You don't do what Diddy wants you to do. And so the prosecution is doing what it needs to do too, which is like zoom out. Like the defense wants you to zoom in, super in, be super myopic on that's just domestic violence. That's all that is. And the prosecution says zoom out. It was coupled with threats and demands like we heard in that one voice memo to Jane. Like I'm about to disappear on you. You do what I want you to do. You do your job. He says you act on your job. After she sent him that photo of her on her period, of her, period blood. You do your job. You get in there. And then she went in with the 2 escorts and came out vomiting. You get back in there. Let's finish this off right. Like it's not a loving relationship in which sometimes the guy blows a gasket. It's a controlled relationship where he's threatening them to get them to perform in these so-called freak-offs, debauchery nights, hotel nights. And so the prosecution's whole theory is much more zoomed out than the defense is. We'll see whether the jury gets it. The prosecution also referencing back to the one psychological expert they had on who talked about why these women, after having been raped, as one claims by Diddy, or beaten, as both claim, they would then go back voluntarily into bed with him as a voluntary sex partner or just stay in his life at all. And she talked about how it's trauma bonding. That expert spoke to what that is. The expert also spoke to how these abusers love bomb you at the beginning and they overwhelm you. And then they continue the promise of like being able to deliver on that alleged love relationship throughout the relationship. And the prosecution brought that back up too with Jane. I just want a normal night. Oh, you'll get it. I'm coming to Florida. We're going to go out. Oh, let me speed dial the escort after I tell her we're not doing a freak off that night, but we are. I'm going to make sure all of it is just so manipulative and controlling. Okay, that's that. I've got one more topic before I let you go. Thank you for indulging me with all this time.
Oh my God.
And that is fun. It's so fun. Halle Berry is back at it. I have a strong theory that Halle Berry, after she was publicly accused of being bad in bed, has been on like an 8-year tear to prove it's not true by publicly humiliating herself with aggressively progressive sexual behavior that's totally inappropriate. And no sooner had I said it, but she showed her vag at the Met Gala, and that led me to tell my theory about her. My husband and I have been talking about this for a couple years, because he's the one who saw the comment it was a woman who knew Halle Berry's ex-boyfriend and said he said it to her, if memory serves, that she's bad but she's boring. And ever since then, she's been spiraling. So she shows her vag at the Met Gala, and then she does like some promo for her husband's, I don't know, it's like for a lube that she's advertising, and they're in bed like talking, and she's naked, and she's like, can't wait to use the lube. Like, what? You're Halle Berry. What are you doing? You're not a Kardashian. Why are you advertising lube? And then the latest comes out today where her bikini bottoms in a little dance her partner, husband, whatever he is filming, just happened to fall off, Maureen. Here it is.
Oh, you can't stop the
She's walking around in a white bikini, dancing weirdly.
Can't stop the
She's in shadow, then you can see her. Sexual dancing. White bikini. She's walking across the screen and whoops, her bikini bottom falls off.
I hate
and
when
they
that
act
happens.
right when you hate when you're just, my underpants are gone. What happened? As my nana used to say,
recorded,
wear your pants. Wear your pants.
Yeah. Wear your pants. This is so, it's amazing the midlife crises that we're seeing unfold. I thank social media. I do thank social media for this. We're seeing the facade of these celebrities who would otherwise have us believe they have it all and they have it all together. We now see through these unmediated, it's almost like they don't know their own ids. Like they don't know themselves. They think this looks empowering, and I can't feel sorry for someone with this amount of money and, whatever she's got. But I do kind of feel sorry for her, because it's clear that her self-worth is bound up in one thing, and that is her body and her sex. So 2 things, her body and her sexuality. Yeah. What's going on between her ears is of no concern to her,
Right. Well, it's interesting to me because you look at Melania Trump, who is this supermodel. She has lots of nude pictures, which are out there from when she was much, much younger, when she was a model, and she did some racy photo shoots, including on Trump's plane. Ever since she became an actual adult, a woman of a certain age, and even before Trump became a politician, like, she's the picture of class. You never see her trying to get our attention these days with that kind of behavior. And Halle Berry's 58 years old. I guarantee you, Melania Trump looks as good or better than Halle Berry does in a bikini. But she doesn't feel the need to do that anymore because she's matured. She has other gifts. She's the picture of class. She knows she's in a different role in our society, and she's living up to it in spades. You got Halle Berry, who still is Hollywood royalty. Everybody knows who she is. That name, I mean, everybody knows her. Why can't she live up to it? And I really think something was done. Like, people make stupid insults like that about you as a public figure all the time. But for whatever reason, this one got to her. And like a ticking time bomb, it's like exploding her career. It's like her bully's now in her head, and she's her bully. She's bullying herself into making these terrible decisions where she's debasing herself in front of all of us. I really want someone to make it stop.
It reminds me of, you remember Billy Bob Thornton made a veiled comment, much the same, about Angelina Jolie. He said something, it was a print interview, maybe with GQ. He said, you could be blanking the most beautiful woman in the world, and sometimes it's like having sex with the couch. Like, and that everybody took that to be about Angie. And that, the wild child image was like the sort of overcompensation because, but you didn't see, and Angelina Jolie went the other way. She went over to the United Nations, and she went over to like adopting children from various countries. Her overcorrection went another way. But it just, to me, speaks to sort of I don't know if it's a chicken and the egg thing, but like the corrosive nature often of Hollywood and the insecure people who find themselves seeking validation through that level of mega stardom, where this does seem the worst thing you could say about Halle Berry in her mind is that she's bad at sex. Like, that's the worst thing you could say.
Can you imagine? It's like, she must really think it's true. She must think it's true because otherwise she'd be able to let that roll off her back, like water off the duck's back. And she's with the lover. Instead, she and the lover, I don't know if it's the husband. I can't remember their marital status.
He's her boyfriend, I think.
Okay, he's in the videos with her. He wants her to be showing the bottoms fall off. He wants her to be talking about lube. Again, I don't get it. It's like the Bezos thing. I'm interested. I'm genuinely interested to hear from our audience. Like, the men, does it make you feel good to see your wife like half naked and people drooling over her, especially in the 50s? And women, what do you think? Would your husband want it? You think your husband would want this of you? Like, you constantly in a sexual, outwardly facing mode, as opposed to behind the closed doors. Obviously, every man likes that, and every woman probably likes it too. But this is the public face. You're really choosing something else when you make this what you're known for, which is what Halle Berry is doing. And that is what Lauren Sanchez is doing too. I mean, we don't know her as a helicopter pilot who was a journalist for a while. We know her for her enormous boobs and her increasingly weird plastic surgery. It's not a great call.
It's sad. It really kind of depresses me a little bit, that there's so many great examples of women who grow older and grow further into themselves and expand their intellect and their interests, and they have a kind of freedom maybe in their 50s that they didn't have while they were raising children, or trying to really climb the ladder of their careers, and they really begin to accrue a kind of power that nobody could really take from you, and that really comes from knowing yourself and coming to like yourself. And I see stuff like this, and I think that this is just such a manifestation of rampant insecurity and self-loathing that at this stage in life does not bode well as they continue, because age and time come for us all. And Halle Berry, she looks amazing at 58, but she will not look this way forever.
I know. And it's like the men, I don't know. Maybe Jeff Bezos is doing the same thing with his weird, I don't know what injectables, if any, he's getting, but he looks very strange and very different from how he used to. But in general, the men, don't feel the need to over-sexualize themselves, like just to hang on to youth and vibrancy and like, I don't know, some projected sexual prowess. Like they don't seem to be doing this to themselves in Hollywood. Men are still allowed to age. Tech is different. I will say Bezos is in tech, and I know a lot of people in tech, and I am told that there's pressure even on the men to try to stay young because it's just such a young man's game. But for the most part, it's women, it's famous women, and it's these women who just think they're reduced to one thing, their vag. It is depressing. There was a video, it got taken down probably for obvious reasons, but I did see it before it got taken down, of a young female B-2 fighter pilot working for the US government. And and I don't know if it's the B-2 pilot who was involved in the Iranian strikes or not, whatever. But this woman who was young and seemed very on it, talked about how she just wanted to get into, I think it was engineering and I don't know, some sort of like super advanced scientific field. And then she found out, there are opportunities in the US military. She could potentially fly jets. Something had never occurred to her before. And before she knew it, she was flying the B-2. She was young. She seemed no nonsense. She seemed super smart. I think about gals like that, Maureen. I think about the gals who worked at the CIA and helped find Osama bin Laden. And I think there's hope, that most young women are much closer to those young women than they are to the Kardashians or on the path of a Halle Berry or going the Lauren Sanchez route. I think most young women do have a strong head on their shoulders and understand the difference between being sexy and being pathetic / weirdly desperate and needy, of being a sexual person, but still of having one's dignity and understanding in what settings to deploy one's sexiness and sexuality. Like we focus on these stories in part because they are anomalies, right? Because they are the one-offs. In certain industries, they're more common than in others. But in America, net, I still believe most young women have a strong head on their shoulders and know what they're doing and know the difference between right and wrong.
I agree with you, Megyn. And if I may humbly submit, it's because of fighter pilots such as the one you just referenced, and also inspirations like you and I who have been to space and who came back to Earth to tell the tale and to serve as further inspiration and show a younger generation the way. So, I'm just saying, but no, I couldn't agree with you more in all seriousness. I do think that those women are a minority slice of the population, and that now we live in a world where there are just far too many examples of what it is to be a really accomplished woman of substance that is so much more appealing than stripping down to your vag on the Met Gala red carpet or showing up your oiled up, what looks like a surgically enhanced behind on the yacht belonging to your, what seems like a spiritually bankrupt billionaire,
Yes, it's so true. No, I like Usha Vance. I think about Usha Vance. Usha Vance goes to Yale Law School, gets a job clerking for not one, but two different justices on the U.S. Supreme Court while she's pregnant, having babies with J.D. Vance, who back then, we didn't know what J.D. Vance was going to wind up doing. He wasn't particularly successful. She definitely did not marry him for his money or his power at the time. And now winds up the vice president of the United States. She's the picture of class. She looked totally elegant at the inauguration and the festivities around it without being inappropriate. She's a working gal. She's a mom. She's a great wife. She's got it all. That's who I want my daughter looking up to. None of the other women who we've mentioned thus far. And as you point out, astronauts who have been to space, because we've been, so we can say we're inspirational.
Exactly.
Great to see you, my friend. I'll see you on the Nerve.
Likewise, MK. Thank you.
All right, talk
Bye.
Soon. See you, Mo. Bye. Okay, thanks to all of you for listening. We're back on Monday with Walter Kern. That'll be a great one, too. Have a great weekend.